Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Chilluminati podcast, episode 324. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Mike Martin, joined by the only two people I could do the show with without driving them completely insane, Jesse and Alex.
I'm already insane. Hello.
Exactly.
I'm already completely, so.
Oh, there we go.
You look so at one. Sitting there.
Like, I woke up today at 5 a.m. and then before noon walked 12,000 steps.
12,000 miles.
So, no, we did like 7 miles before noon. So I'm like.
I'm excited for today because, Jesse, we rarely get this version of you. You know,
chill, just completely worn out.
Sleepy?
Yeah, like an exhausted Jesse. Usually you're just like, you're always ready to go, but you've had a busy week, a busy day. So like, I'm excited. Who knows what's going to happen? What's going to come out of your mouth as we talk about this?
I may, by the end of this, I don't know what the topic is, but by the end I may be like, yeah, no, that's real.
Yeah, as he's passing out.
Yeah.
yeah, as he's half asleep. See?
One last thing. That's real. Yeah, that's all.
That's all. It's just done.
Or maybe by the end of this episode, you, the listener, will head to patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod to sign up for our lifeline in this dark and crazy world of serious / bad / existentially annihilating news that comes our way each day. And this is our antidote for it, is making this show, not just for you listening to it, but for us making it so that we can continue this nice symbiotic relationship. Please head to that website. We are doing all kinds of cool shit with it in 2026. We're slowly making the plans right now, and it's just going to be a cleaner, funner experience next year, and there's going to be a lot more reason to go check it out. So
why
if
do
you're
we have to wait for next year?
That's just, we're rolling it out. It's like a production cycle.
Why are you rolling it? Why are you not walking it?
What do you mean? Why am I not walking it?
Yeah, why are you rolling?
Oh, just because, it's like a more chill way of moving. Like, I feel like...
Oh, do you mean like weed? All right, never mind.
I feel like if you're rolling, like, you're just like...
No, I get it.
I've never rolled before.
You mean on ecstasy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever a drug makes you roll.
I just was... I was just hanging out, talking about my Patreon.
Gotcha.
Yeah. If you guys want to sign up for it, you should go there. And this month, you'll get the same old Patreon 2025 experience. But if you roll there, by 2026, you guys are going to be having...
Roll. Don't walk.
You guys are going to be having the time of your life. And I don't know. I'm just really excited for next year. We just have been... Like, we planned out this year a little bit, and it, like, brought a little bit of cohesiveness to, like, sort of like our theming and topics that we did for the year. And next year, even more, we're doing like some good, much different things than this year. And I'm just excited for it. So come support the show. It's like a good time to do so because...
Yeah, we're rolling in 2026 strong.
Yeah, we really want to knock this year out of the park.
Are we the strongest we've ever been?
We might be the strongest we've ever been.
Physically, mentally, spiritually?
I feel strong. Like, I feel potent.
You guys falling apart?
I feel potent.
Yeah. My mind is getting stronger. My body is failing.
Out of all the things you could have said, potent was not the one that but here we are.
Well, not all of us can be masters of cunnilingus or whatever the fuck Mathis said the other day.
Yeah. This is how quick shit goes out of Jesse's. That was last episode. That was the intro to last episode, Jesse.
No, it wasn't.
Forget it already?
Is that why I'm getting messages from no one?
Yeah.
From not a single person?
They're intimidated, and I would be too.
Yeah, it's not every day you get to dine with a master.
So stupid, dude. Speaking of dining with a master, are you boys ready to jump into today's episode? Oh, let me shill my own shit up front, by the way. Go to youtube.com/@themoleculemindset. Go check out my new project
That's good.
Where we will eventually see these boys ideally on that channel as well. An exploration in consciousness and psychedelic stuff.
Drugs and thinking with you.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah. Jesse doesn't want to be. That's fine.
No, of course I do. Let's do this.
Let's get drugged up. Let's do the drugs. Okay. For today's episode, not anything to do with drugs, actually. While last week was the story of the Andreasson Affair, this week is what I would consider the spiritual cousin.
It's like the yang. It's like the yang to the yin. I was so blown away by this. I didn't know that what we were doing, and then he told me yesterday, and I was like, oh shit, this is like low key a two-parter.
Yeah, in a weird way it is. Because this person that we're speaking about today, much like Betty Andreasson in the 60s, has had a similar kind of weirdly psychedelic encounter with multiple witnesses on the scene at the time, and has so been well known by his encounters that he has been studied and communicated with by the College of UNC Wilmington, MIT, the Monroe Institute, NASA. He's been in contact with the CIA, the FBI. He has direct connections to things like MUFON now. He's worked with Dr. Harold Puthoff. He's worked with Colonel John Alexander. Jason Alexander is a different person entirely. And
I'm not happy about it.
We're talking NASA, CIA, FBI, NRO, and actively studied to this day by colleges. We're talking about the individual known as Christopher Bledsoe. We have mentioned him on the show in passing a few times. He's just, Jesse, you looked... I
don't recognize that name at all.
That's fair, because again, in passing, he's been brought up in relation to usually just like weird UFO sightings. This man has had a bizarre encounter one day, and then since then has had many encounters, but I would also argue that after having that one bizarre encounter, Chris started, I think, thinking everything he saw was potentially something out of the ordinary when it wasn't necessarily. But on January 8th of 2007, Chris Bledsoe, at that point, a broken, bankrupt builder from North Carolina, went fishing with his son near Fayetteville. 4 hours later, he found himself running toward a campfire with no memory of where he'd been. His son was missing in the woods, paralyzed by beings with glowing red eyes. And what followed would subject his family to years of ridicule, but also lead to a miraculous healing, validation from NASA and the CIA, and encounters with a luminous woman who said humanity's fate hung in the balance.
Luminous?
This is the luminous. Yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
no, that like literally too, like literally a glowing woman.
Oh, okay. So you're not being poetic. You just literally mean she's glowing.
I literally mean she glowed. Yeah.
Not what I thought you meant. I was like, wow, he went there with luminous. He hit us with a luminous woman. I'm like, wow, can't wait to see her. But
the imagery is intense. But no, she was glowing.
Wow.
Yeah, we are finally covering the story of the Fayetteville Incident and everything that came after it. It's about a man marked by a trauma from childhood, a family struggling with the impossible, and the price of honestly telling the truth no one wanted to hear, because Chris Bledsoe, for a long time, this ruined his life. The main source we're using today is his book that was released 3 years ago, 2023, or is that 2 years ago? Almost 3 years ago, called UFO of God. Because much like Betty Andreasson, Christopher Bledsoe is and was and still is an incredibly religious person. And the way he perceives this is fascinatingly religious in its entirety. And that's why it's like a spiritual successor to the Andreasson Affair. But to get into the story and start at the very beginning, our story of Chris Bledsoe begins in rural North Carolina, where a pattern emerged early on in his life. One force harms and another rescues. At 2.5 years old, a young Chris Bledsoe he wandered into a burning trash pile. At straight 2.5, just wandered into it. This is going to be something also that you're going to notice for Chris.
That's just like a story of his life. That's just like a childhood story of his. Is one time he wandered into a burning trash pile.
Yeah. And I'm trying to figure out what that even means.
That's like it's three levels more like I'm going to be a serial killer than getting bonked on the head.
But at 2.5 years old, he just was unsupervised and wandered into a burning trash pile in his yard.
What do you mean a burning trash pile?
Have you ever?
Like you're saying it like there's just.
They do it out here. They do it out here all the time in rural Texas, where they pile trash and then they burn it.
But you mean like some single person's burning trash pile?
Yes, their families.
And not like a massive inferno of trash.
Like from The Simpsons.
Because the idea of wandering into a thing, you imagine it's bigger than what you're describing.
He went down the block to the local burning trash pile.
Maybe there was a pile of trash, it got on fire, and he wandered in, versus someone set some trash on fire and he like tripped and fell into it.
Nevertheless,
they pile of trash. Like out here, they do it all the time. They pile of trash into a big heap and almost like bonfire style light that fucker, and they tend to it for hours as it burns.
That is some, like, no offense to the burning trash community, but that is some hillbilly shit.
that is why you get your brain fucked up. That is like standing next to a pile of burning trash. Hey, bring the 2-year-old over. Like, let's go have a sit down at the trash burn. Bring the toddler.
I also do want to make it clear, like, if you do read the book, Chris isn't a phenomenal author. He does a good job at telling the story, but he's extremely boring. But if you if you listen to his interviews, that's just kind of how he is, just super low key and just tells the story very matter of fact and just as always, just kind of chill.
I wonder if he was
even
more
during his traumatic moments, the way he writes about them, almost like that's how it is when he's that young, where he just kind of, and I wandered into a trash pile. But my grandfather saw me and he tackled me to the ground. Like that kind of like
that might be the first time I've ever heard that phrase in my I wandered into a trash pile.
There's so
not a thing I've ever heard anyone say before.
So many options, so many opportunities to not wander into a burning trash pile. Even for a 2-year-old, I'm almost judging a 2-year-old. Like this is a situation where I'm almost judging the cognitive ability of a 2-year-old to wander into a pile of burning trash.
That's like, 2.5, first of all. 2.5 years old.
Okay, so maybe he's had, you know what? At that age, that's
months.
a lot. At that age, that's a lot more life. You're right.
But I mean, like I said, though, and as he wrote, luckily his grandfather saw him, that he was caught fire, and he tackled the little boy to the ground and smothered the flames with his body. Just like plopped on top of him. Then, in a montage of trauma, at 6 years old, just a few years later, he fell off the top bunk of his bunk bed, knocking out half of his teeth loose. Like, luckily baby teeth, he's only 6.
Holy fucking shit.
Look, kids do that all the time.
And
how to discredit someone before they're 6 years old is this. This is it. Okay, first thing that he did was he wandered into a trash pile when he was 2.5. Then he fell out of a bunk bed and lost half his teeth. He's about to tell you how
24 stitches from a doctor.
He's about to tell you how he contacted life from another world.
Look. Also, side note, the doctor who gave him 24 stitches would later be charged with murdering his own family.
Okay, that's crazy. What the
Hold on. Is that another Chilluminati episode?
That's another episode.
Before we start, look, this guy, I relate to him in a way that I cannot express. Before I was 10, I was hitting the head with a golf club, jumped off a swing, and had a stick go through my head.
Woo!
Like I have, and later in life, my doctor in New York, the doctor I went to, just like my general physician, he was arrested for watering down his flu vaccines.
Damn. Dude,
so
watering
down
we're like profit.
I could be a prophet is what I'm saying. Yeah, we're on the same page.
I
broke my fingers a few times.
Yeah, I got like 4 stitches in. I had 3 staples in my head once.
Oh yeah, that sounds bad.
I was 20 and jumped off my bed and hit my head on the ceiling beam.
You were 20 and jumped off your bed.
Less cool.
Yeah.
Were you doing at least like a cool jackass stunt with your friends at least?
Yeah. Do you ever hear the song and the monkeys on the bed? And did you never?
You're at a party, you were raging
I did
too
hear
hard?
that song, but at 20, I didn't realize.
You didn't think it was a cautionary tale?
I think it was a challenge, actually.
Yeah. They literally jumped off and broke their head, dude.
You heard there was no more monkeys? I'm a human jumping on the bed.
No more monkeys were jumping on the bed. They all hurt themselves. That's the end.
It's time for man to jump on the bed and teach the monkeys how it's done.
Yeah,
it's time for man to show monkeys what they can't do. This is where the line is drawn.
Bonked my head and needed 3 staples.
They can't even listen to their doctors like we can.
No, it's true. Yeah. And it shows you what good consciousness does for you, really.
Yeah.
Not much. After that, though, after his 24 stitches from what would be a future family murder, at 10 years old, 4 years later, an incident that should have fucking killed him happened to him. It was New Year's Day, 1972.
How old is he now again, you said?
At this point, he's 10 years old.
Okay.
Chris and 2 other boys were dove hunting on 5,000 acres near Cape Fear River. When they were firing at them, they hit a dove, and a wounded dove fell into the woods, and Chris ran after it. He broke open his shotgun and fumbled for shells, and as he went to pick one up that he dropped when he did that, his friend Vance, thinking he saw the bird, fired.
That's like the kid who hit me in the head with the golf club. I was setting the ball down, and he thought that I was going to get out of the way, and I was like, oh, hold on, and I went to go reset it, and he whacked me in the head with the gun. Dang, this guy and I think we're the same person, dude.
Well, for him, over 300 pellets of birdshot tore into his
back. That's like the same thing.
What the leaving a baseball-sized crater just inside his shoulder blade.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he got blasted in the back, inches from his fucking neck or his head. Think about how close that was to killing him. When he got hit, he fucking collapsed face first into the dirt, and he was certain he was dying. He even writes how he had the thought, oh, I think I'm dying now. Like, that's what he wrote. Like, that's what was happening. Luckily, none of his vital organs were hit. 17 pellets to this day are still lodged inside of him. Yes. What part of that cracked you up there, Jesse? Like midway, you looked like you had a thought, and that thought.
I was going to say a thing, and then you don't call me out on this.
I'm sorry. You're
supposed to ignore the fact that I definitely, when you said that he got back shot, I was about to say I have never gotten, but I've definitely been a part of this. Like, I was gonna do the whole bit, and you called me out, and I wasn't prepared. I was just laughing. Just let me laugh.
Sorry,
just let me laugh at my stupid jokes in my head.
A dude that I know just recently told me that he was in a motorcycle accident and he blacked out, and right before it happened, and then he opened his eyes and he was in the superhero landing pose, and he was fine.
What? I don't think that works.
I don't know. I
don't think that's how it works.
Related story. Both
now
accidents.
That sounds like a made-up story we'd cover.
It's a real story. Yeah. We all know this guy.
Thank you so much to Factor for sponsoring today's episode. I don't know about you, but to me, fall always kind of feels like a reset. Between seeing all the kids in my neighborhood go back to school, busier routines, shorter days, just finding time to cook can be tough. But that's why I love Factor. Their chef prep, dietitian approved meals make it easy to stay on track and enjoy something comforting and delicious no matter how hectic the season gets. And now you got a ton of variety. Choose from a wider selection of weekly meals, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp at no extra cost. Enjoy even more GLP-1 friendly meals and new Mediterranean diet options packed with protein and good-for-you fats. And for the first time, you can try Asian-inspired meals with bold flavors influenced by China, Thailand, and more. From more choices to better nutrition, that's why 90% of customers say that Factor helped them live a healthier lifestyle. And I'm one of them. I've been using Factor now ever since they started working with us. And even when we are not sponsored by them, I still use Factor. It just makes my life so much easier when I know that a good chunk of meals in my week are already taken care of, and all I got to do is heat that sucker right on up. I use Factor. I think you should check it out too. Eat smart at factormeals.com/chill50off and use code chill50off and get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for a year. Free breakfast for a year? Really? Dang, that's crazy. That's code chill50off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Thank you again to Factor for sponsoring today's episode. Something that you don't know about the shooting is that just days before the shooting, Chris had been waiting at his family's church when, according to him, a massive owl appeared 2 feet from his face. They locked eyes, entranced him until his mother's headlights found them, which broke the trance. What she said she saw was Chris under the tree, but she did not see, quote, no owl. He later came to see, rather, that the owl must have been an omen, and that the message was that he was going to get hurt in a few days.
Can I ask,
looking back on it.
Can I ask, like...
You, please, I can't promise I have an answer.
When you say giant owl.
He's 10, so he's small, so it's probably like... If a barn owl or something did show up, it'd be close to his size.
Okay, fair enough. And then it appeared to...
He said in front of him and locked eyes with him.
Like magically, like appeared?
He said it put him into a trance. Yeah, he said it just appeared. He didn't say it swooped or anything. He
almost
said it just
dream.
appeared.
Almost a dream.
But again, I don't know if you've ever, I have a few, every once in a while I'll see an owl out here. but I'll see their shadow. Like, they are silent motherfuckers when they fly.
They're unbelievable.
There is, then they're low to the ground they are silent.
We do get some pretty big owls out here. Yeah, I've seen some.
Yeah, they're quiet flyers by nature. So appearing could have just meant it landed near him and he didn't notice it until he saw it. And then also, maybe he just saw an owl because he lives in the farmland.
Sometimes you connect to animals, though. Like, sometimes you'll look at an animal and it'll look at you and you'll both be like, I don't know what you're thinking of saying, but right now we are on the same level. You look it in the eye and it's like,
that's me looking at my dog at 3 a.m.
That was that was you and your Smitty incident after meditation, where you kind of like looked at him and you just knew.
Yeah, I was like, hey, dude. That's
exactly right. Sometimes you're like, damn, are we best friends right now?
And he's like, sup, man. He said it. Yeah. He said it out loud. He said, sup, guys.
Maybe that wasn't weed you did.
You think I don't know. I just feel like sometimes that's real. I just feel like that's a real thing sometimes. Sometimes you just know. I don't know if it's psychic, but it's something. I
have moments where I'm like holding my pets and I just feel like a deep connection for like a moment. It's like, I just love this animal and I appreciate them, kind of thing. I know what
honestly,
you're saying.
They're probably thinking the same thing. Like, look at this big stupid ape. Love this guy.
My cats absolutely think that. But the point being, like, as I said, he grew up in Fayetteville. Like, he lived a rural working life. His father, Ted, was a carpenter and a hunter, and Chris spent his childhood tending to livestock, mowing acres of grass, and shoveling dog kennels. Like, seeing an owl, I don't think was a fucking omen for him, and it's only him looking back on it does he think it's an omen. At night, he said he stared at the moon through the trailer window, drawing circles in the dirt, pretending that they were spaceships. He said his, quote, first encounter with a shape that would appear throughout his life in stranger and stranger ways was starting to take form. And that owl was one of the first ones. And he's specifically referring to a non-human entity that is what he refers to nowadays as angels. But just to give you an idea, he does see the owl as like one of the first encounters with something that would be regular. By high school, though, he was actually just running his own farming crew. He wanted to go to college, but his father needed him at a job site the Monday after graduation. And at 17, his car's radiator exploded, covering him in scalding coolant, injuring him pretty badly.
Jesus.
What the fuck?
This guy wins. He beats me in every conceivable way when it comes to
this is what I'm saying. Like, this original, about 2 pages that I'm reading, was originally 13 pages of just his life.
Of the follies of this man's life.
Yes, and I just cut it. I'm just giving you the quickest version I can while still trying to keep a narrative like through
this
line
man
here.
Just getting frightened by giant birds of prey and like stumbling into trash fires metaphorically as well as literally.
Yeah, his car's radiator exploding and covering him, scalding coolant.
That happened to my grandfather's friend, like in front of my grandfather's eyes, and dude like eventually
was
died.
it Christopher Bledsoe?
No, but the dude eventually did die. Like, it was crazy.
Oh shit!
Like,
no, definitely not.
Yeah, this is that's like no joke. That radiator shit.
No. Then 2 years after that, at 19 years old, scaffolding that he was working on gave way beneath him. He fell 4 stories and fractured his spine.
My man is not 20.
Not even 20 years old yet.
No wonder this guy had to be like, I'm special. There's a reason I'm here.
In between those 2 incidents, something I really didn't go over, he had gotten married and lost his first wife.
Lost?
Got married and then lost like
dead?
11 months into their marriage. Jealous and suspicious, he left a party where he'd seen her talking to an old boyfriend. And so he stopped at the church parking lot, the same place he'd seen the owl, and decided to turn around. And on his way back, he found a wrecked car, and in the grass lay a mangled body. As he held his dying wife in his arms, he realized that it was his wife who had gone off with another man.
I was so sure that you were just going to say that they like broke up until the last thing that you said. That was crazy.
Yeah, tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. A few years later, he would eventually meet Yvonne, whose family had deep roots in the Pentecostal Holiness Church. They got married in 1983. When she became pregnant with their third son in 1987, Chris gave up his dream of becoming a commercial pilot because he desperately wanted to be a pilot. He really liked flying, and instead to stay home and be a family man and be, a dad that's around instead of flying around all the time. Then by the 1990s, Chris's construction business that he finally got off the ground was booming. But he made a mistake, I feel like many first-time business owners, and one like Chris, who hadn't really had an education in business beyond working with his dad, learns the hard way. He scaled too fast. While it was a booming business, he kind of just outgrew what he thought he actually could do.
10 of these, yeah.
And the stress of the business and it being too big and starting to fail triggered Crohn's disease.
Oh my God, dude. What the fuck, man?
I feel so bad for this dude.
What
man.
happened to this guy, dude?
I just like nature, the universe is trying to take this man out.
Natural one, dude. Yeah, dude is done.
Way.
Body.
God, yeah. Then after 9/11 happened, the market collapsed. And
Wait,
then
by the way, this is all confirmable stuff, right?
Oh yeah, this is all confirmable stuff. This has all been looked into, proven. Like this is just what his life was.
Yikes!
Yeah, it was just rough.
God damn.
It's just, yeah, it's crazy. By 2000, so like after 9/11, the market then collapsed, which was not good for his business. And by 2003, Chris became bedridden from medication toxicity, from all the medication he was on for his Crohn's disease and shit.
What the fuck, dude?
He sold his company.
Christ, my man.
Can we just give this guy the win? Like, I don't care what his, at the end, if you're going to be like, and then he said, everyone should have a tickle on the butt. I'd be like, he's right. I don't even care. Like, I don't even.
This guy burned.
What I'll say about Chris is that he is such a genuinely, seemingly kind man. And he does have a loving family now. Like, he has people who support him. Like, and I think having like Stanford following him around and MIT following him around and shit also is like gives him credence to his experiences. Because I will admit, even though a lot of what he posts regularly, like stuff he sees in the sky, there is a number of it where it's like that's just like that's weird, like that's bizarre, and it's just interesting. So we'll get into that though. Like we're going to literally talk about that stuff in the episode. Yeah. What was that, Alex?
No, it's such a slippery slope, that seeing stuff thing. And
yes, because absolutely a lot of the shit he puts up there is a fucking satellite. Like I am so certain of it. As
especially you specifically now, ever since you got online about looking into the sky, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I try not to talk about it on the show because I know how super fucking crazy it sounds. But
yeah, and I make fun of you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want you to make fun of me in private. It turns me on in private. I just don't like it in public.
But it turns me on to do it in public.
That's why we'll never. But that's why we do good live shows together.
Right. Yeah. Because it's private in that only a couple hundred people are watching.
We don't tell each other exactly what we're going to do ever, so that it's always a little bit of a surprise for everyone. Yeah. That's the fun of it. Is the uncomfortableness of it all.
I'm perfectly comfortable.
I got to be Chupacabra.
You did. You did. You absolutely got to be Chupacabra.
Davis thought that Chupacabra eat babies for some reason.
You know what? He's listening to this episode right now, and I want to say, you were wrong, dude. So wrong.
That's crazy that you were. And the funny thing is, Davis was. He said that was the one thing about the Chupacabra he was 100% certain about, is that it ate babies.
I know y'all ate babies.
Yeah, I know y'all say babies. All right, so 2003, bedridden from medication toxicity, and his business had been basically driven to the ground. He had basically lost everything, and so he had to sell his company. But because of the market and the lawyer he fucking hired, the long story short, he was basically out-lawyered, and by 2005, the family was left with nothing. All they had left was the little dilapidated double-wide trailer that they had bought. And that's all they really had. His kids went to school without lunch money. He couldn't find work anywhere. And in 2006, his father found him a framing job on the coast. Finally, something like a job. His son, which we're just going to call Junior because it's Chris Bledsoe Jr., quit school at this point to work with his dad.
Or Indiana, as his friends call him.
Let him go, Christopher. Yeah.
I'm a junior. Nothing wrong with that. They finished.
I'm a junior is such a funny thing to say.
Listen,
hey, just so you know,
I'm a junior.
Yeah, that's a less comfortable thing to say as I get older, actually, now that you mention it. But anyway, him and his son went out to...
Are we cracking you open right now?
You are. Went out to the east.
Like, yeah, unzip me, Doc.
No, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about how old I am. So him and his son went out to the coast. They finished the job by Christmas and headed home. Chris describes those holidays at that time as having, quote, nothing particularly festive about them. They were in a depression. They were just depressed. He was, in his own words, quote, as broken a man as I had ever been. Which, again, after going through everything he went through, I don't blame him. But 2 weeks later, on January 8th in 2007, everything changed. It was a Monday. Chris and Junior were at the beach house site to meet the contractor and get paid for the job they'd done. After the crew got back to Fayetteville and cashed their checks, they all called Chris, asking if he and Junior wanted to go fishing at the Cape Fear River. Along with 3 subcontractors, they piled into Chris's red Ford pickup, and after turning onto the property, they came to a broad field surrounded by pine forest. The dirt road descended through the trees toward the river, and Chris regretted agreeing to go almost immediately. He wanted Junior to enjoy his paycheck, but fishing was the last thing Chris wanted to do right now. He'd kind of become a habit of keeping his sadness to himself. And a lot of people who are depressed, he just wanted to be home and away from people. But at 2:30 p.m., they emerged into a sunny clearing beside the Cape Fear River. And the water at that point he described as deep and still, quote, the color of strong sweet tea. To give a very vivid, he's just a Southern guy, man.
Color of strong sweet tea. That is so...
It's like a dark brown.
That whole notion runs so counter to what you were saying about the way he forms language earlier, that it's hard for me to imagine the dryness with which you could describe something with the qualities of peach tea.
But it's sweet tea.
That's what I mean, sweet tea.
Yeah, but also it makes sense, again, having lived out in Texas for the few years I have. Sweet tea is everybody has sweet tea in their fucking fridge. Everybody makes sweet tea and always has it. And so him being kind of that rural mindset, and a little bit Southern, I can see that. I can see that being one of the few touchstones he can reach to kind of sound poetic, when also I think the reality is it's just one of the things he knows. And that's what he reaches for a lot when he writes. It's not all. I feel like I'm shitting on the way this guy writes. I'm not.
It's not that you're shitting on it. You're just painting a picture of his personality. You're just painting a picture of his personality, right?
I can't write things so straightforward. I always have to paint.
It feels to me like you're just saying he's not a very colorful guy. He's more of a just sort of.
He's a blue collar man. He's just a blue collar guy. Yeah. He's a blue collar worker.
Yeah.
So they got to as they got to the river, they set up their fishing gear, and Chris went for a walk alone along the river. He sat against an old oak tree and watched the water, and by 4 p.m., it started getting dark in his shaded spot, so he walked back to check on Junior and the guys. They said they were, quote, just getting started and might build a fire. They gathered wood and got a fire going. I don't know if you've ever gone fishing. I've gone a few times, but it is a all-day affair. Midday into the night is... I've never done that. Usually it's early morning, as the sun isn't even up yet, and then you're there till all day long.
I like it. I think it's one of the chillest things you can do.
It is really, really chill. I haven't gone fishing in fucking decade plus.
Let's go fishing, guys. Next time we do a thing, let's go fishing.
We always catch and release, though, right? I don't keep it. I
mean, unless we're going to eat it.
All right. I can't kill the fish, though. You're going to have to.
Depends on every fish. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. I also don't want. No, even the water of LA, even the waters off the coast of LA are not good for most fish.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd be thrilled with all the fish around these parts.
But we can get some nice fish we can get some nice fish. I'll take care of it.
Yeah, we'll find something. Or if you ever come out this way again, we do a show on Texas. There's plenty of little fishing spots out this way.
I know a few fishing holes as well.
Ooh.
They're mostly restaurants, but
that's pretty good. Yeah.
I wanted to make my ass as a fishing hole joke, but I waited too long.
Whoa.
I was going to make an Animal Crossing joke, but I don't have one. So there you go.
That's fair enough. All right. So they got as they were getting the fire going, Chris was like, well, I guess I'll go on another walk. And at this point, he said he got into the habit of, quote, leaving happy situations before they could turn bad. He didn't want to in my mind, he bums the situation out by lingering too long. Like he means by hanging out with his friends and they're just like having a good time and he's just going to be like dragging the mood down. About 200 yards from the clearing, though, he heard a rustling in the brush. He figured it was a deer probably as the sun was going down, and he stopped walking and the rustling stopped with him. He kept walking and then it began again, but this time, quote, sounding like a 2-footed creature to me. An intense fear slowly crept over him and he started walking faster toward the clearing. When he reached the open field, the sun seemed to have set, but there was still enough light to feel safe. He started walking up the road toward the gate, looking down to dodge mud puddles. And about 20 yards from the crest of the hill, he looked up and saw, quote, what looked like the top of the setting sun peeking out over the hill, just a reddish orange silver, which is common in seeing kind of UAP stuff. They're often bright orange or have like an orangish glow. He took a couple more steps and then looked again. And this time he said he saw what he can only describe as the entire sun. For him, this was strange. He hadn't traveled far enough, obviously, for such a drastic change. The sun had just gone down. It's not like he walked to the other side of the earth. And a few steps later, he arrived at the crest. And as he climbed, he said he saw a second sun, the same size and color as the first one. He dropped to his knees in awe in this moment. These sun-like objects didn't light up the field, though. They were close, he says, barely 200 yards away, and they were two flaming spheres, quote, each about 45 feet in diameter, as big as houses. So these things are huge. And he said they were hovering in perfect silence. And he said as a pilot, or at least when he used to fly around, he knew these were not any kind of aircraft that at least he'd ever heard of. So he scrambled back down the hill to hide in a reedy ditch as terror began rushing through him. And he thought of Junior and the guys down by the river as he did. He wanted to get back, but first he wanted to get a better look. And this is where Chris and Betty Andreasson have a similarity. They're scared, but he's not scared enough not to be like, well, what is it though? You know, most go running and screaming or try to get away, but he stops and wants to get a better look. He slowly crept back up the hill and saw the big lights again, swirling with the red-orange flames. And then he remembered Junior and decided that, okay, maybe I do need to turn back at this point because his son was more important. And as soon as he prepared himself to run, at that very moment, he decided to look back one last time. Quote, a third one suddenly appeared high above and dropped down instantly alongside the other two. So now 3 balls of orange light have plopped down. He felt this one, he, quote, was in charge. And he says he knew that this new one knew his fear, quote unquote. And that realization shook him to his core, he said. His hair stood on end. He tried to hide, lowering himself back into the reeds that he'd just jumped into. And then the next thing he remembers, he was 50 yards away from the campfire, running towards the campfire. He was terrified.
Okay.
He was terrified, but relieved to be back. He immediately noticed odd things, though. His truck had been moved, pointed toward the path he'd just run from. The large pile of sticks they'd gathered was completely gone, and the fire had, quote, dwindled to an ankle-high lick of flame, which is nice, a little more poetic from him.
So we're talking like time
Hours.
passed.
Yep, chunk of missing time, like a blink, and suddenly it's hours later. Suddenly one of the men emerged and they asked where he'd been. And he just asked, what do you mean? I was just up the road in the field. Because remember, he was only 200 yards away when this thing happened. And what he said was
at 200
quote,
yards, they didn't see anything, huh?
Well, we're going to get into it.
Okay.
So the man simply responded, no, you weren't. We've been up there all night looking for you. You see your truck over there. We've looked everywhere in that field. Like they drove with the truck around looking for him. Obviously, he was confused and asked them what they're talking about. He said he was only gone for a few minutes. He asked where his son was, and they told him Junior had gone looking for him to the south. 2 men had taken the truck searching everywhere else, while the third tended to the fire, because you can't just leave it unattended. And they didn't think he was all that far away. Chris then, at that moment, panicked, and the only thought in his head was, quote, where is my son? He started jogging south, shouting for Junior he started jogging south, shouting for Junior with no flashlight. He broke through some brush, some briars were lashing at his face, and he then heard a faint voice saying, Dad. And then as he got closer, he realized it was his son. Just to his side, he saw a figure trying to stand up in thick branches with something grabbing his arm. And then he shouted, "Dad." And this is what as soon as he saw his dad, this is how it's wrote in the book, Alex. This is just what the boy immediately shouted at his dad, apparently. Just one little sentence, but.
"Dad, why did you leave me? Where did you go? There are these creatures. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move."
Oh, dude, I love you. Turn him into like a fucking vibey LA, dude, you know? So he responded by saying he'd only been gone for 20 minutes, and he shouted back that no, he's been gone all night. So Chris calmed him down, led him back to the fire, and what he said is his boy was, quote unquote, fiercely mad at him. Chris couldn't really wrap his head around what was happening. There was that strange gap in his memory. He'd realized now hours had gone. And between cowering in the field and running toward the fire, what had happened in that time? It made no sense that over 4 hours had passed and he doesn't remember any of it. Walking back, Junior described how he'd gotten so deep into the thickets. He'd been the first to worry about his dad not coming back and leaving the others first to go look for his dad after his dad had been gone for about 2 hours. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he said he saw, quote, deep in the woods, 2 deep red spheres drifting across the path about the size of bowling balls. He told the guys, who said to, quote unquote, stop joking around. So Junior just turned back and again walked down the path, calling for his dad again. And again, he saw the same thing, 2 floating red orbs floating across. But this time they, quote, stopped in the middle of the path and redirected themselves toward him. Like they seemed to notice he noticed them, and they just stopped and just started moving in his direction. Immediately he got scared and dove into the brush to hide, and the light stopped, he says, just about 15 feet away, hovering close to the ground. He saw, quote, 2 little entities glowing softly with red fiery eyes. The eyes were, quote, mechanical in nature, about 1.5 inches around, opening and closing like shutters. So it's a weird description of like, not your typical description of like a gray. Weird mechanical eyes that are shuttered like, I just think like camera lens almost. He goes on to say, quote, little translucent beings walked around playing with stuff, picking up sticks and looking at them curiously. One was, quote, always watching him, guarding him. Like they knew he was there, but they weren't interacting with him. But he realized he couldn't scream, that he was paralyzed, unable not only to yell, but unable to move. And for 2 hours. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Like just paralyzed, which reminds me of the Andreasson family, like the daughter and all the kids, the mother and the father. And as I lost my spot. There we go. So he couldn't scream, paralyzed. And so for 2 hours, Junior just was paralyzed in the bush in abject terror. They eventually, Chris and his son arrived back. Yeah, he had a bad time, which is going to be in stark contrast to what we learn happened to Chris in those 4 hours. So eventually they arrived back to the fire. The 3 men had now heard Chris talking about lights hovering in the air and Junior weeping, talking about these red-eyed creatures. And even the other men that were with him say that these were, quote, rough, tough men talking about Chris and his boy. But they were now creeping them out. The friends were starting to get creeped out. Now, the sky for them was dazzlingly clear. Chris noticed a frost on the grass, which troubled him for some reason. I don't know why it troubled him. Junior just kept repeating that he wanted to go home. The fishing poles were still in the river, but everyone was just ready to go. Whatever happened over those 4 hours, while no one else but his son and him had seen anything, they were good. They were creeping him out, and it was done. Then, as they were getting ready to pack up, one of the men points up to the sky and just says, "Oh my God." 9 balls of light, about the size and color of Venus, shone from high in the sky and started to, quote, gather into one circle directly above us. What? The circle then began to rotate and then scattered like salt across the sky, quote unquote. That's their quote, not mine. 3 of them began to flash and descend into the woods across the river from all of them. They were about 45 feet across again, pulsating, this time brilliant white and electric blue light, like the blinding light from a welder's torch. They hovered there silently, blazing, stupefyingly bright is the quote they use. All of the men started to scream. One of them said, quote, "This is it. It's all over. Let's get in the truck and go right now." So they piled in, screaming at me to floor it, Chris said. And Chris pressed his foot on the gas and headed for the road. In his side view mirror, he saw their tackle lit up by the electric blue-white light. One of the orbs appeared, quote, following us down the path, and the screaming from the people in the back seat, Chris described as deafening. His friends were freaking the fuck out that this light was following them. They made it to the field. Chris accelerated further toward the crest of the hill, and the truck apparently went airborne briefly as he just went into the field and hit the hill. The two fiery red-orange orbs were still in their original location, but the third one was now, quote, down in the middle of the road before us as they were heading to the road. But he says it had transformed into, quote, an egg-shaped, dazzling array of light that appeared like crystals, spikes, revolving all around, as Chris's description. This caused him to slam on the brakes. The five of them crashed forward as the truck slid closer to this thing. And it was now being described as oblong, like a tic-tac laying on its side, hovering 5 feet off the ground, blazing with brilliant white light. Dazzling rays spun around its surface. The ditches were too muddy to get around it, so they couldn't bring their truck through it. They were essentially trapped. They had to either go toward this thing or turn around and go back, drive into the woods. One of the guys said he knew a family in a trailer at the far edge of the field, and Chris turned and headed straight for that. But as they approached, their windows were lit up, the main door wide open, TV on, but, quote, no one was on the couch. One of the guys jumped out, pounding on the storm door, but no one came. Chris looked back, and the orb had, quote, come within 150 yards, unquote, and was still blocking their only real exit. He started blaring the horn, but still no one came to the door. So they drove back toward the road and were, quote, again confronted by the same ball of fire. Out of nowhere, they then heard a gunshot, and a few seconds later, another gunshot. And at the third gunshot, the egg-shaped, quote, began to rotate, pivoting what appeared to be its nose directly at our truck. It began approaching them and started picking up speed. Just when they thought they were about to be fucking whatever, vaporized, I don't know when this thing showed up, it started to gain altitude. It cleared the trees and then slowly moved over the roof of the truck. A buzzing static fell over them, which is familiar to Betty and Barney Hill. They looked up through the sunroof as it passed overhead. It paused above the treetops, rotated to point north, and then, quote, shot up into the sky like it was fired out of a cannon. Chris floored it at that moment because now the way was clear. And when they got to the paved road, unfortunately, they saw, quote, another orb keeping pace with them over the trees. They came alongside a recently timbered field and saw a, quote, whole city skyline's worth of lights pulsating near the ground just above the stumps. They drove past the Cape Fear River Baptist Church, the same churchyard where Chris had seen the owl when he was a young child before getting shot and where his dying first wife was. They came to a curve and saw, quote, yet another orb hovering over a power line. Chris slowed the truck down to the speed limit, 35 miles an hour. And this is what he says. He says, quote, this was a dead man's curve where my first wife died in my arms. I would not let this same curve make an end to me or my son too. I slowed down to 15 miles an hour. So he's being chased by these things. He's flaring it, but then he's like, I'm just going to take it nice and slow. Just like right around. The orb's presence above the, quote, most traumatic moment of his life filled him with a sense of peace. And Jesse, I'm going to have you read this quote that comes from Christopher himself. This is how he feels in this moment when that light comes over him as he's driving.
Sure. For the first time, I truly believed that what had happened to her was not my fault. For the first time, I truly believed that being able to hold her in my arms as she died was a gift to both of us. Yikes. My jealousy had not ruined our lives. That's a take.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's how he felt when the light hit him in this one. He's going around the bend here.
My jealousy had not ruined our lives is crazy.
Like the guilt, he said, of like feeling like it was his fault, a lot because she left because of him. He was jealous and worried about infidelity and he would follow her. In his mind, he kind of like rationalize that as his fault.
Right.
So this, whatever reason, this light hit him and the guilt went away. But the men in the back seat were pounding on his seat, howling at him to, what the fuck are you doing? Don't slow down. Go, dude. Go, go, go. But Chris wanted to get out and watch. But instead, Chris had the urge to want to get out of the truck and then watch this, quote, huge black rectangular shaped silhouette hovering just above the high voltage power lines. He said it appeared to have a row of square glowing lights like windows. They are all freaking out, and Chris is like, but I kind of want to get out of the truck and look at it.
Have you ever just wanted to get out the car really quick?
It seems pretty cool out here, man. Maybe we just should do it.
I've seen enough horror movies to know that guy is lost. That guy is controlled by the monster, and we are all doomed.
He's actually a shapeshifter. He's made of a million teeth. He's eating us.
Come on, guys, come over here.
Oh, dude, Step Monster. We have to watch that movie. And also, other than the three men, his son did not want anything. He was freaking out, too, telling his dad to go. So he listened to his friends and decided, fuck it. He's not going to stop and look at them. And he went and dropped all of them off. Junior begged his father not to go back by that curve. So they took the long way home. He made his dad take the long way home to go back because he didn't want to go anywhere near it. And on the highway, they saw, quote, we saw 8 cars pulled over as if they were looking back toward the power line. When they got home, Junior, quote, went around the house, turning on every light, closing all the blinds, and locking every door. His son was traumatized. He was horrified. And also the cars pulled over. He doesn't really talk about it much, but I'm guessing it's because other people would have seen it. It was late at night, mind you, somewhere around midnight or so. So they probably pulled over to look at it. But this was 2007-ish. So you're looking at Nokia phones, the brick phones, or just kind of getting into some flip phones. So not really camera in your back pocket quite yet. But we're getting there. You have a camera. It's just not very good at that point. And then after his boy locked every door in the house, he went into the bathroom, shut the door, and just hunkered down to the bathroom and would not come out. Chris went straight to the TV, though, because he was convinced a worldwide invasion had begun. He thought this was War of the Worlds, something. If he's seeing it, other people are seeing it.
Gotcha. It must be something
everywhere.
Major.
It must be everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And when he turned and was flipping the TV, he said, quote, there was nothing on but a rerun of an Elvis special. Nothing. He was fucking confused.
Well, hold on. What special?
Fair. I don't
Self-disclosure, put him on.
Yeah. They're out there, baby.
Over the sound of the TV, as he was watching it, he then began to hear the
leader, baby.
Yeah, we want to just do a quick Elvis special for us real quick because then we can get this out of your system.
We got to get out of the system. It's there now.
Okay, gotta take
Little Johnny Bravo.
Nobody. Johnny Bravo was a phenomenal cartoon. I loved that cartoon.
That's a run,
Mama. So as he's watching the rerun of Elvis, I'm guessing, over the TV, he said he began to hear the whomp, 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 whomp of helicopter blades outside at a distance. So then that's when the dog kennel near his house erupted. All the dogs started going off. He had about 15 dogs that were barking as if they were fighting for their lives. He described it as. That's what caused. That's what had Junior broke it for Junior, and he came out of the bathroom. And Chris told him that they had to go. That he was going to go check on the dogs, but Junior was vehemently opposed against it. He did not want to go out there, saying, "quote, please, Daddy, please don't go out there. Please, Daddy, please." He was begging his dad not to go out there. But Chris convinced him to come without a flashlight and convinced his son to come with him. And he convinced him the reason to do that is they could use the darkness to their advantage. They'd have a harder time. The aliens or whatever's out there not going to see them in the darkness if you don't bring a flashlight.
Right. No, that's that checks out.
And for extra protection, they were going to bring their Chesapeake Bay Retriever, Rosie, to guard them. They're one of their dogs.
Rosie is the best character in this story,
right? Yeah. I love that name. So the kennel itself was 50 yards back in the woods. Rosie leapt off the porch barking, quote, the hair on the back of her neck standing on end, according to Chris. The dogs were losing their mind. They wanted to fucking go. And this also happens a lot in UAP encounters in farmland with animals. They always kind of like seem to drive them nuts. I mean, again, we can even look at Skinwalker Ranch for the weird animal interactions that were happening there. Junior, though, he said, was holding a fistful of the back of his shirt while they were going. He would not let go. He was clutching for dear life. The poor kid should just left back. He shouldn't have dragged his boy out here. As they got close, Chris noticed the dogs weren't barking toward the garage, but they were barking behind the kennel where there was nothing but woods. Chris decided to send Rosie in to flush whatever was out there, and he tapped her rear to send her out because, you know, they're trained to like hunt rodents and keep the farm safe and stuff. And she dashed away in what he described as long bounding strides, and he and Junior ran back to the clearing. The grass was still had some frosted tips. I want to say frosted tips on it, but then just think about
tips.
Yeah, you know, I just think about the 2001
Dude,
haircut.
one time my dad is like almost like you can like see through his hair, right? But like when he was like, oh, this had to be like 15 years ago or something, maybe more. He was like at Huntington Beach and they were like, do you want us to frost your tips, like bleach your tips for free? And he did. And you could just see that they were just like a little bit more orange in the sun. And he was like, check them out, bleach tips. I was like, yeah, man.
I love that. I love that.
The cool hockey players had their tips bleached in high school because we didn't have football in our school, only hockey.
What's hockey, dude?
Yeah, what's hockey? It's like ice football, okay?
No, we have a hockey
sticks.
team. I know. It's okay.
No, I know. But yeah, the grass still had, like you described it as like there's still frost on the grass. Chris, because of this, slipped as he turned to look at the tree line from the frost. But even when he fell, he noted that he didn't realize that, or he noticed that he didn't even realize that Junior had let go of his shirt at that point, and Junior had sprinted back to the house ahead of him. Like once they got to the woods and were leaving, once they were heading back, the boy was like, "I'm out, I'm leaving." Chris then ran back to the clearing, stopping against an oak tree, and he could hear Rosie barking in the thickets. He looked over his shoulder for Junior, but he was gone, and he felt, quote, terrible for allowing us to get separated. He turned fully around and then apparently just said, oh my God, because standing, quote, here, I'll let you read this part, Alex.
Standing 4 feet in front of me was a 3.5 foot tall being, gently glowing the color of the moon. It had 2 red eyes and a glassy, translucent triangle fixed on its chest.
And that's where I revealed to you the Chilluminati has always been an alien organization run by this being. No, this is what I mean by luminous. Quite literally, like just a glowing being kind of appeared. And he says again that he was terrified, but instead of running, he just immediately surrendered. Apparently, he said out loud, quote, I'm sorry, you got me. I'm sorry for running.
That's real, though. You know, at a certain point, you realize, like, that just happens. You're like, I'm not getting out of this.
I was fucking scared. I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah. No, like, and the last thing he said was, I'm sorry. I surrender. He's like, and honestly, dude, that's one of the most I agree with you. It's like one of the most real reactions that, like, the all night you've been avoiding you can't get away. It's too late. Jesse, I'm going to read what the response from this being was. Go ahead and read that.
You don't understand. We are not here to hurt you. We are here to help you.
We love you.
I bring you peace. I bring you love.
I bring you peace.
And like a scene out of a movie, that's when Rosie came barking through the thicket, leapt out from the bushes, and, quote, in that same instant, the being disappeared, which left Rosie, kept sprinting away, and left Chris feeling shocked and befuddled, he described himself as. He jogged back after that. Junior was waiting, staring at the back door, like waiting for his dad. And Chris went to his study, planning to crack the window for a cigarette. This was a lot. He needed a little bit. He's going to go sit in his office, in his study, and just have a little cigarette to himself. Like Junior, though, begged him not to even open the fucking blinds. Like, did not want him to do anything. But Chris, man, opened the blinds just enough. And the backyard floodlights were on, and there, quote, on the grass, 50 feet behind the house, was another being. This one much larger and taller than the first. It patiently and deliberately walked toward my house. That's when Chris slammed the blinds down and just said to Junior, we got to get out of here right now. And then he grabbed his boy.
Get the fuck out of here, kid.
And ran to the truck and drove to a hayfield about 5 miles away, parking, quote, right in the middle of it. Is that a befuddling move for you, Jesse? Because you were just like, what?
This shit just went tits up, motherfucker.
But the concept of like the one safe place is this massive open field.
He's in the middle of fucking nowhere. So yeah, like, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't feel safe there either. I feel like I'd just be in the open. I'd be like, come get me, I guess.
I mean, trees seem more likely to hide you from any sort of shit, but I'm more along the lines of the give up variety right now. Like, I know when I'm beat, and I'm not beating aliens. I would have been like, yeah, no, whatever, guys, do what you got to do. Just
yeah.
Get it
And
over
I mean,
with.
he did, but I do think part of the reason he's doing this is because his son is so scared too. Like, if his son wasn't a part of it, maybe he wouldn't have run again.
Sure. This is why I do not intend to have kids, because they're fools.
Oh, yeah, absolutely correct.
I'd grab that kid and be like, sometimes you just surrender to aliens, kid.
Yeah, if you have, oh God, no matter where you go, the alien shows up faster than you could possibly imagine, just give up and just hope they're there to like.
They got fireballs, multiple fireballs, and time dilation. I'd be like, look, our 3-dimensional brains can't handle 4th-dimensional shit. It's fine.
No, exactly correct.
Sorry, my head hurts.
I'd be like, kid, you're about to learn something crazy right now.
Yeah, bye.
Gotta go. Yeah, just give up and hope you're part of like a breeding program or something.
Hope.
Or that, yeah.
Hope, he says. Yeah.
Hope. So when they parked in the middle of the hayfield, they watched in every direction basically until exhaustion took over. They just watched until they passed out. When Chris woke up, he was in the front seat and Junior was still in the back seat asleep. Mist, he said, was rolling across the grass as morning was coming, or maybe had already come, and his head, quote, flooded with the events from the day before, apart from those 4 hours that he had missing in that first encounter. He checked on Junior and then made sure he was good before driving them home. The 3 subcontractors went back to retrieve their fishing gear the next day, and they returned having found, quote, no sign that any of it happened, other than their own footprints and a black pile of ash where the fire they had started had been. There was no evidence there. They stopped at the mobile home where the lights were on and the door was open. The residents said they'd been home all night, but heard nothing. No knocking, no truck horn, no gunshots, even though they were literally at their front door slamming on it and honking at it, which goes to that weird psychedelic thing where maybe there's like, much like the Andreasson Affair with Betty, how she's like getting phased out of the door, but the family's being left behind. You get into this weird liminal kind of space in between whatever they are and how our consciousness, our brain can translate whatever it is happening. And there's this weird middle ground. And maybe they did get there, but maybe they never knocked on the door. Maybe the sound had been completely muted, other than locally, wherever they are from this thing. Or maybe that they knew it was there, and in their own shared conscious hallucination, they all went there, but it wasn't actually there. Like, there's so many ways to look at it. If we're, again, much like the Andreasson Affair, just assume this happened. There are multiple witnesses and stuff. But it's weird that the neighbors are like, no, we were home, and none of that, nothing. They saw no bright lights. Like, this is a night where they fucking slept comfortably, which I find fucking weird. And when the subcontractors told them what they'd seen, apparently their disbelief came with judgment. Not until when they described what happened, they immediately just treated them like shit. Like, okay, you're crazy. Like, they don't believe them in any way.
Interesting.
And that's when Chris said he realized that, like, I can't really talk about this, or like, if I am, I'm going to have to talk about it very carefully, because his family's reputation at this point in his life was already in the gutter. Failed business, like the guy who fucking gets hurt all the goddamn time. Like, he's just that guy people know about. And failed contracting business and shit. He was in a lot of debt. Like, he's fucked. Like, we didn't have time to go over all of it, but the man was out in a good spot. And
that also makes it easy for people to say, oh, he's just looking for attention. He's doing this.
It's easy. It's easy to write him off.
They don't know what I know. He suffered too much. He gets a free pass. This guy, everything that happened to him is real.
Yeah. And even if, to me, like, I do think this moment, whether other future things are real or not, this, I think there is an element that was real that happened here to all of them. The son being horrified is like a big tell for me. And I'm very curious. Like, we'll talk about it. We're getting through this. So he got explained it to them. They kind of judged them and did not believe them. Chris, this is when he realized he had to handle this carefully for his family's reputation, which had already fallen so far. So Junior told Chris's dad, his grandfather, what had happened. And quote, before he could finish, was laughed at and turned away. His own grandfather laughed at him. Like, that's like, that sucks.
That's
and
like,
his dad,
that's a generational, a pain.
He literally explained it away as Junior was just being a crazy kid on drugs.
Well, there you go. Body.
Yeah, exactly. Chris's wife, Yvonne, and his other kids were out of town until Friday. And Chris had time to, quote, account for what had happened and figure out, quote, how to parent Junior through the most traumatic night of his life. He said he felt rotten for having abandoned him for those 4 hours. That was weighing on him. And that Wednesday night, the dog started, but he didn't have much time to take it all in and think about it, because that Wednesday night, the dog started barking again. Chris, filled with dread that turned to anger, grabbed his rifle and went down toward the tree farm, despite Junior's once again pleas for him to just ignore it. But he just said to him, Junior, I have to see what this is. I have to finish this. So he grabbed his rifle and had a movie moment. He's like, you're tormenting my family. I'm already fucked. We're going to fucking finish this. Whatever this is, we're going to end it now. So, I love that about him.
Badass.
I love that. The dogs were barking toward a neighbor's Christmas tree farm. So Chris figured whatever was there would, quote, have to deal with me and my gun. He crossed a broken fence and began to see a brilliant light shining through the evergreen branches. And he got down and started to army crawl underneath the lowest branches. The brilliant light blinded him, and he said he felt a, quote, powerful humming static reverberating around his entire body. That another common description. I think Travis Walton discussed something very similar. Betty Andreasson had something similar. Obviously, Betty and Barney Hill had something kind of similar. And it reminds me, the only thing, the closest thing I can probably compare to is if you've ever practiced meditation in any way, when your body starts getting heavy and like you kind of get like a weird pins and needle-esque kind of like vibrating feeling on your whole body. It's very light, but It's an interesting, I just think it's your brain noticing all the little sensations over your body that is typically being filtered out. And I wonder if I wonder if that's how it feels. I don't really obviously know, but that's kind of how I picture it in my mind.
Vibes.
He feels this thing reverberating all his body. And as he was getting closer to it, it just got more and more intense until it became too intense for him to continue. He described it like trying to touch opposing ends of magnets together. That's where it got to the point of like how he couldn't push on any further. He said he then felt a painful, prolonged zap that drove him to crawl backwards. This thing was like an electric fence. It was just like, no, get back, get back, you naughty boy, you naughty human, do not come any closer. And when he got far enough away from it,
just feel like a rat experiment. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like
that's part of it that makes it feel real to me. Where I'm like, if you don't want to hurt these things and you just want them to get the point, zap them. The humans understand the same language of every other animal. Right. Pain, exactly. So when he got far enough away where the pressure and the vibration wasn't so strong enough that he couldn't stand, he stood up and came back to the fence. And in front of him, quote, flickering from total invisibility into a translucent moonlight glow, stood two beings. And as they stared at each other, Chris said he was hit by an, quote, overpowering emotional understanding. What he describes as, quote, something that is an, quote, obliterating epiphany, the singular ultimate importance of all living beings. He said this was immediately followed by shame and disgust. He looked at the rifle in his hand, and Alex, he said this is the first thought he had after this hit him. For Alex to read.
What was this murdering tool in my hand? How could I undo the harm I had done to these innocent creatures my whole life? This is a Neil Breen scene.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, this is.
Oh man, now I do. Now It's like a Neil. Now you made it into a Neil Breen scene in my head forever.
A Neil
Like
scene, a Breen scene,
a Neil Breen scene, dude.
A Breen scene, dude.
Like, oh man, this is where like we gotta have the Neil Breen scene sound effect happen so we can, reuse it all the time. Anyway, the being stared blankly as he seemingly just kind of processed all this, sinking into, quote, profound mourning and regret for having killed creatures in his life. Like the weight of it reminds me of the movie Powder a little bit. Do you know the movie Powder from the 90s?
Sure.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, like how like the pain of all the animals or whatever you can take the pain on. It's almost like all the pain of everything he killed, that guilt like all of a sudden hit him like a fucking tsunami. And just as that revelation hit him, he said, poof, they flickered invisible again. And his sadness turned to relief. It seemed he had finally been given a clue as to what this was all about. And this understanding, he says, remains at the core of who he is to this day. He never squashes a bug, he no longer fishes, and he no longer hunts.
Hell yeah. That's like a lot of people who like do shrooms though too. They're just like,
yeah, it's a fascinating revelation of like, it's weird. On Friday, Yvonne and the other kids finally returned home. This is about 3 days after this event. And the experience, quote, wrought a change in both Chris and his son, Junior, that everyone would have to reckon with when they came home. And it did not take long for rumors to spread like wildfire. The quotes like, that poor family, or I wouldn't let that guy operate a hammer, or the devil is at work in that man. These are all like
family. When like
the word got out of the story of what happened. Yeah, that's like the rumors that immediately hit the local fucking neighborhood. And Yvonne, to her credit, though, met this news when she got back with some generosity and a lot of skepticism. She thought Chris might have had a relapse from maybe the toxic medication and that he hallucinated. Chris might have considered this himself, quote, if it weren't for the fact that 4 other people saw what I saw.
Right.
And Yvonne, fiercely devoted to her children, would not tolerate talk of what happened in the house. She understood the social cost in their religious community, and the Pentecostal church sees anything not in the holy book as either a sinful folly or the work of the devil. So no more. You don't talk about this shit in the house. The pity and scorn was passed on to his family, he says, and his kids were mocked at school. Chris writes, quote, I still regret the shame and ridicule I caused my children to suffer. But in the weeks following January 8th, 2007, something else happened. Quote, all my Crohn's symptoms disappeared. I stopped taking my medication. Now, this new freedom was a kind of paradox. He could finally work again, but, quote, it became harder to find anyone who would risk hiring me. Nobody would hire this guy. So even though he's feeling fucking better, now he still has no work and he's stuck at home, unable to talk about what happened even in the household. And he retreated into himself, vexed by the mystery of the 4 missing hours still. And when he tried to focus on that gap of time, quote, an intensely nauseating headache would settle over me. One night in January, just after Yvonne and the kids came home, he heard an odd sound, a quote, and just, I don't need to read this quote, have anybody else read this quote, but I'm gonna. This one's for you, Jesse. This is
why you do this to me. So this is the sound that he heard.
Yeah, this is on a January night, a couple weeks later.
It was in fact, hoot, 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 hoot.
Oh man, it's like the owl's in the room with me right now. Phenomenal job.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Yeah, he heard a great horned owl that was bellowing over the house's tinny roof, because they're like a tin roof, so that shit was probably just rattling. The owls came back, quote, almost every night and stayed all winter. These nightly visits started to persuade Chris to reconnect with nature. He bought camping gear and started taking trips to the Appalachian Trail, sometimes for over a week, sleeping on, quote, bald mountaintops with no highway sounds or light pollution. Started again. Man, I would never be in the woods fucking again, and never mind that, ever alone. Ever. Never. On the same hand, but again, it makes sense because back home, this dude was an outcast still.
Right.
Like, he couldn't really be free even in his own home. His family had to, quote, endure the sight of church leaders sprinkling me with holy water as though I were a monster. And they even came onto the property unbidden to sprinkle holy water on the ground their house was on itself. Like, the dude just, I feel so bad.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough.
It sucks.
But it's also like, no offense to, you know what? Definite offense. I figure most very like religious people who are like really into their faith and stuff, can agree that a lot of the things people do are performative. Like this seems less about we really believe this guy is like up to something, and more about like we're doing this for the collective whole.
Right.
Like we're and to like shun him a little
Perfect.
bit. Which is a thing that happens in all religions. There's a sort of like performative nature of we're going to do this because it makes us feel comfortable, rather than it's actually like a real thing we believe.
Yeah, exactly. But it goes to the point of like this event was doing him no favors. Like, this was not
he's on the outs with the group.
And his group was his fucking community. So, you know, that's what he's dealing with. And to find human connection, because he couldn't find it at home and nobody in his neighborhood or community did, he decided he was going to set up a CB radio with a 131-foot antenna using an old handle he had when he was kind of back into the hobby in his younger years called Hunter. And he found a community of people who were also, quote, stuck and in need of friendship on the CB radio. His new connection to nature came with crushing shame for all the animals he'd killed. He began to spend camping trips drawing and painting the wildlife around him instead. And one night in October 2007, Chris found a show called The UFO Files. And what he saw was Stanton Friedman come on the screen. And if you don't know who Stanton Friedman is, we've talked about him before in many of our other UFO files. He's like J. Allen Hynek, one of the OG researchers, scientists who've researched into this and came away saying there's something going on, whatever that something is.
All right.
And he came on the screen and said, quote, if you have seen a UFO, be sure to contact MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And Chris felt a wave of relief. He immediately typed everything out on their online form, sparing no detail, but then he paused. He knew they'd want to send an investigator. If Yvonne found out, it would be a major breach of trust, and he worried the neighbors would also find out, and he didn't want to risk it. But he didn't delete it either. For 2 weeks, he just kind of wrestled with it, having typed it out. And he finally brought it up with his son, and who was at that point beginning to get a little as curious as his dad was about it, with some time put into it, a few months. And after comparing their memories, they found no discrepancy and decided they would send the email. As he expected, MUFON emailed back and they wanted to send investigators. Chris replied, quote, no, absolutely not. Do not come here. They started calling and he would hang up before anyone else could answer. And a few days later, in the third week of October, Yvonne and the kids were on their way back from visiting family. About halfway home, quote, they saw what they described as an ice cream cone shining and hovering through the air. It, quote, shifted through all possible colors, this iridescent, shimmering, elongated triangle. It seemed to be, quote, intent on ushering them home just over the treetops. Just before they arrived home, the cone, quote, disappeared as though it had gone through some hole in the fabric of the night air.
It was guiding them home?
That is, again, that's the assumption Chris is putting on it.
It was like just watching them, like,
it
what's
seemed
up?
to follow them until they got home, though, yeah. And it was
Oh.
Yvonne and the kids who were seeing it this time around. When they parked the car, the kids came trampling in the house shouting, Daddy, Daddy, you won't believe what just happened. And his wife confirmed it. And she just kind of just like deadpan apparently just said, yeah, that's what happened. And like, yeah, she was not happy. The shape they described sounded exactly like the glassy shape that he'd seen on the chests of the being. He connected it with the weird triangle, the upside down triangle on the chest of the being. And at this moment, Chris said he was overcome with gratitude, and the whole family now shared the same problem. That's why he was like thankful. Junior's nightmares, which had been constant all year, still never relented.
Poor kid. This kid got so fucked more than anyone.
Yeah, the kid got the raw end of the deal here. Chris started having them too, though. Quote, apocalyptic visions caused me to wake from sleep shouting. And Junior would scream about a whoomp, 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 almost like the sound of helicopter rotors, and say he, quote, saw shadowy figures in his bedroom. At 17, he would come sprinting down the hall in sheer terror to be with his mom. And by December 2007, Chris knew he had to take action. The only thing he could think to do was call MUFON again. And he relented and started corresponding with a local investigator named Steve. Now, in February 2008, Steve came to conduct interviews. He sat down and told the whole story, and Chris told the whole story with Yvonne in the room. And when he finished, Yvonne piped up for the first time. She piped up by simply asking a question to the MUFON investigator. She calmly asked him, "Have you ever heard of shadow people?" Chris said this bewildered him. Yvonne launched into her own story, one that he hadn't heard before. In the weeks before Christmas, she'd been in the living room when there was a, quote, quick double flash of bright, blinding light. Out of the flashes, two dim, translucent beings stepped out and into the living room. She followed them down the hallway. She rounded the corner and saw them disappearing, walking straight through a wall. Two of the children had been sitting with her and saw it too, but they, quote, decided to keep it a secret to protect Junior and Chris from having more nightmares. And I imagine for the mom, partly the religious reason. Chris, at this point, this didn't make him mad that she hit it. He was overcome, he said, with joy and gratitude. And I find it fascinating. She had her own experience and just kept it to her fucking self. He'd wanted nothing more than for Yvonne to believe him. And from then on, they would kind of work together toward peace in the home. After Steve submitted his report, MUFON became interested in a more comprehensive investigation. They'd just gotten a green light from the Discovery Channel for a 3-episode series. In it, Chris's case was going to be the premiere episode. Despite her own experiences, Yvonne was against the idea, but the kids were excited at the prospect of being on TV. The show became an inevitability, and Chris states, quote, "It would come to be one of the worst decisions of my life," because he did not get really paid for this, for one. And MUFON stipulated that shooting would be discreet and quick. Swept up in optimism, though, and from hearing this, Chris and Yvonne decided to just agree to allow the cameras to briefly show their names, faces, and voices. And the Sunday before shooting, or rather, they didn't want them to, but they fucking did anyway. The point was they didn't want them to, but they for ratings reasons, I believe it was, decided to do it anyway, and did so. And they, the Sunday before the shooting, a producer called asking for hotel recommendations, and the family, quote, scrambled around making the house spit shine clean and got their best Sunday clothes out because he was coming over. 8:30 a.m. rolled around, the phone rang, and here is what the call was. I'm just going to read it. It says, "This is a producer." Actually, no, I don't know. I've never really dealt with producers. Jesse, here's a producer saying this is what he said in the call.
"Hi, Chris. We're actually going to need you and Yvonne to come by our hotel to sign some more documents. Can't do anything until after we've taken care of this. Then half the crew will film at your house and the other half will film at the river. We'll break for lunch, so tell your family to think about their orders from Applebee's restaurant."
Man, they didn't even take these guys to a nice place. They took them to fucking Applebee's.
I must stress.
Applebee's
one, that
is
sounds like a
very
producer.
good. Yeah.
No, no, I will not. No. That's not what this very much sounds like a producer, but more importantly, the fact that anyone convinced them shooting would be easy and quick, it's obvious that this family has never dealt with actual Hollywood production, because there's nothing easy or quick about it's whenever someone says like, "Oh, just be 4 hours, it'll be fine."
No
You're
way.
there all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the kids hearing this were disappointed that the producers didn't decide to come stay at their house, because that's what they were wanting. The kids were excited the producers were going to stay at their house, and they were not.
I'm convinced that the producers of projects like this don't necessarily believe.
Oh, I don't think so. No, they want them. They want the numbers. And you'll see that. You'll see that. Don't worry.
They're probably thinking to themselves like, "These weirdos? No thanks."
But to the point of like, this is something has no familiarity with. I mean, like, and I don't mean any shade on the kids, but the kids were excited about Applebee's. Like, that was a point he made in the book. The kids were excited about Applebee's. Man,
what year was this?
2007. No, 8 now. We're in 08.
All right. It still wasn't like, Applebee's was all right still.
I stopped working at Applebee's in like 06, and they were microwaving like 80% of the food they made.
Yes, but also, where are we in the country?
Well, I was in New England, but yeah.
I'm talking about this guy.
Oh, fucking North Carolina?
This is probably kind of nice, like for a family
Option-wise, we can't all live in a big city.
Like if you're not a fancy family, maybe going to Applebee's is kind of nice. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just have a bias towards it.
Look, it's not great, but currently it's garbage, trash, poo-poo.
It's terrible.
We used
Yeah.
to get drunk there for a while.
You could go to the bar and get like a weird drink and everything was fine. Life was good.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, was it the lima? What was the margarita they did with Corona in it? The Corona Rita, maybe is what it was called. Where they had like a mini Corona upside down
Great
the
name
margarita,
for it,
and as
by
you
the
drank
way.
it,
In
it just filled
in
it
this
with
day and
Corona.
age, the Corona Rita, delicious.
Oh yeah, yeah, that doesn't work anymore,
Awesome.
unfortunately. Anyway, so Chris and Yvonne drove to the hotel, figuring they'd be back in about an hour, and a man met them and just said to them, "You must be Chris. Come with me." And when they got inside, he described the scene inside the room as an ambush. 3 black cameras were already rolling, a wall of people behind them, and then there was total silence. A voice said, "We're going to have you take a lie detector, Chris. This is Bob Durdak, your polygrapher. He's worked with the FBI." Chris
What
at that
the
point said he
fuck?
became very worried because he thought they were just coming over here to sign documents. He didn't see Steve anywhere. He didn't know who was MUFON and who was Discovery Channel. He was just in total shock. And it was to be treated with this much distrust. He said he felt betrayed, but there was no backing out now. So they strapped him into the machine. One camera was pointed at the MUFON leaders who, quote, glared at me with severe and concerned curiosity, no smiles. And for 2 miserable, nervous hours, they grilled him with the same 34 questions over and over and over again. And the worst part, quote, every time I tried to recall that 4-hour stretch of missing time, the same headache pounded in my brain. He realized the show wasn't about my story. It was about ratings. And the tension was, is the seemingly honorable man hiding a dark secret? That's like what he was putting together as like what this was going to be.
Sure.
And after 2 hours, a voice said, "Okay, I think we have enough here." With no indication regarding the results, they just started packing up. And Chrissy and Yvonne drove home, rattled and confused. Shortly after, vans parked all over their yard and, quote, 12 or so crew members started rearranging our furniture. Next came a meeting with the psychiatrist that Chris had requested, quote, to prove I was not an unstable madman. And she told him the results, quote, not crazy, not narcissistic personality disorder or anything else. Then it was time for lunch. The crew assistant came in with the, quote, armfuls of bags for everyone except for me and my family. They waited patiently watching everyone else eat because they're not on contract to feed them. They're not going to fucking feed them. That costs them money. They don't feed the family at all. The whole crew eats. They don't. And finally, Chris asked if they should go get lunch. I'm going to have Jesse read this again. This is the production's 1-sentence response to when Chris asked if they should go get lunch, the family.
oh, sorry. Actually, you weren't in the budget for lunches. Hope that's okay.
It's just it's so cliche. Chris notes this may have seemed trivial, but, quote, my kids had dealt with hunger. And at their first brush with fame, he watched their hearts break immediately. Like they weren't even getting the luxury of getting a free food. The filming then continued at the river and the field. The MUFON investigators were oddly uncurious, he says, clearly following a script from Discovery they couldn't diverge from. And they interviewed Junior only to, quote, speculate accusingly about his extreme, quote unquote, angst. Like teenage angst was the reason that he had this sighting. The one worthwhile ordeal was what he described as regression therapy, which, quote, over the next year slowly unlocked those 4 hours of blocked memories. MUFON had also promised trauma counseling for the family, but he said they never followed through. They, quote, had gotten all they needed, and then we never heard from them again. So even MUFON fucked them. The episode premiered in late October 2008, and he said it was worse than what they had feared. The family left, quote, was left, quote, not with vindication, but a nationally televised interrogation of our character with inconclusive results. The storm of ridicule and judgment was beyond anything they'd imagined, and Emily, which is one of his daughter, was now 10 years old, would come home crying. And their other son, their second son, Jeremy, who was a freshman at this point, quote, turned his back on all of us in embarrassment. Junior, the oldest at 17, quote, had it worst of all as the only one filmed. He did not go back to school after this.
Damn.
In 2009 at 18, Junior ran away from home. The family had no idea where he'd gone, and this sent Chris into a spiral. He threw himself into gardening with a fervor, building a chicken coop, driven by apocalyptic, said those dreams he keeps having. And then that June, Chris was in his garden at sunrise when he looked back at his house and saw his 131-foot CB radio antenna. A great horned owl was perched on the very top of it, hunched down as far as it could to get a better look at him, Chris claimed. Chris said he shuddered with fear, remembering the owl before the shooting and the owls that hooted all winter after 2007. He, quote, stood there locked in its gaze for minutes. And that evening, he was in his study when thunder rumbled. Emily was playing piano just outside his office, and she stopped to check on Yvonne and then came back. Alex, I'm going to have you just, I don't need you to read this. I'm just going to read this. She just simply asked, like, she comes into the room. I'm not going to make you be a 10-year-old girl for no reason. She just says walks in and says,
for me, it's fine. Okay.
No, I'll be the 10-year-old girl. Mom says she needs you for something. So Chris walked to the front of the house and asked what she need. And just as he got there, there was a huge thunder crack. And he said it felt like a little shockwave had shook the house, which I have experienced in Texas. Thunderstorms that are so close to just shake the fucking house when lightning hits. Or thunder hits. It's crazy. She said, she simply said, Dad, the house is on fire.
What the fuck, dude?
He turned around and realized flames were coming out of his study. Chris grabbed water and threw it on the fire, but, quote, all the radio equipment, my easy chair, the carpet, and the floor were ablaze. He ran outside into the pouring rain to get the house, quote, certain what he would be struck next. He got out of the house because he thought he was going to be struck next, and he went and got the hose. The fire ended up costing this man $35,000 in damages in 2008. He'd avoided being fried by merely 20 seconds because his daughter came and got him out of the office to tell him his wife needed something, only for the huge thunder and lightning strike for his daughter to be like, Dad, I think the house is on fire. Like,
yikes.
Jesus Christ.
This guy was Final Destination level trying to be killed.
There are these people, man, it's crazy, but there are these people out there. Never mind the alien stuff. There are just people out there who have been like just a magnet for like just bad luck, struck by lightning multiple times. A guy who fell out of a plane, survived, and struck out of like, there are people like that.
This alone would convince me I'm special. Like, if the only reason that you gave us, if this whole episode was about him believing this shit just because of how many times he almost died, I would believe you.
He gets a pass for me because of that. Like, even you would have to believe in something special about you at that point. Alex is totally right.
Yeah. And he became certain, too, after that happened, that the owl he saw early in their day was another omen of something bad was about to happen. And later that day, that's when it all fucking happened. That fall, the phone rang, and it would be Junior who had run away from home, reminder. And he was, quote, homeless on the street in California with no money. So Chris and Yvonne scraped together money for plane tickets and went to California to fetch him. Shortly after, Chris's laptop was stolen from the house. Yvonne and Emily's laptops, quote, both much newer and nicer, though, were still left behind. It was only Chris's garbagey laptop that had all his shit on it that was taken. Moreover, there was no sign of a break-in, and all the doors and windows were locked. He says, quote, all my correspondence and files pertaining to our experiences were gone. And the trauma seemingly continued to haunt Junior, too. On New Year's Eve 2009, Yvonne was driving him back from surgery. He was, quote, still dazed by anesthesia, and they got stuck behind a white semi-truck. It's, quote, small circular brake light hovering opaque and red. Suddenly, Junior recoiled and screaming while he said, oh my God, the eyes. Oh, he just screamed, oh my God, the eyes. He wasn't seeing taillights. He was, quote, back hiding. This is what they believe. He's back hiding in the bushes along the Cape Fear River, paralyzed as the eyes approached him. Seeing the absolute horror on her son's face, something shifted in Yvonne. She was flooded with guilt for the years that she had subtly ignored the causing of his suffering. What they think is that maybe as the anesthesia was coming off, it was like kind of just cracking open the floodgates of like his trauma, and it was just flooding forward again.
Oh.
So that's fall. Later that winter, the North Carolina MUFON chapter invited Chris and Yvonne to speak at a meeting in Charlotte. And for the first time, Chris told his, quote, whole story to a group. But the biggest turning point was Yvonne. She was engaged so openly with questions, acknowledging her own sightings to perfect strangers. Chris realized it was because she, quote, needed her son's conditions to improve. She thinks he thinks she's partly doing it to make her son feel like he's not crazy and feel accepted and not like he's like, trapped by this trauma. Chris also reflects on the regression hypnosis. The hypnotherapist had told him his brain was protecting itself from the trauma of the missing 4 hours, and the hypnosis had, quote, programmed my mind to allow bits and pieces to slowly emerge so he wouldn't overload and go insane. Flashes of knowledge began to arrive, mostly in the, quote, the most intense dreams he ever had. He describes his hypnosis with very dreamlike scenarios. Sometimes he said his kids would film him shouting in his sleep. He told them not to wake him. He, quote, wanted to know what happened during those hours because as he was doing hypnotherapy too, he was having memories come back in his actual dreams and nightmares. He describes two kinds of dreams. First, the one that I talked about before, those visions of apocalypse, flame, famine, plague, widespread destruction. He also saw the Egyptian pyramids. And the second one, he says, is memories of his actual physical circumstances. Here's him describing one of those with Alex to read.
One of the orbs had taken me up into it. Inside it was a total, unrelenting darkness like I had never seen before. It was 4 hours I spent inside the craft. I could hear my own breathing. I tried to move but couldn't. That reminds me of that fucking like weird like bondage thing that has been going around as a meme online where it's just like a metal torture device that you just lay in and it's the shape of a body and you just lock in it.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you. That does not sound comfortable anyway. Teach their own, though. Hey, it's not my thing. He also began having dreams of being pulled upward through the rafters and flying around the property. One morning, he dreamed he was flying in fog, got lost and panicked. He plunged downward, crashing through the leaves and branches of an oak tree. He woke up and the violent pain in his neck from the dream was still there. A re-injury of 3 discs he'd blown out years earlier. As he stood in the kitchen, stunned, Junior's friend came in complaining, quote, about how it was so foggy he could hardly make the drive. Chris and Junior just looked at each other and felt a little stunned. During this time, North Carolina MUFON members, quote, continued to email begging for him to come visit, and he eventually agreed. About 20 came, and they were, quote, older and very kind, a different experience than when he was with Discovery and MUFON. A few months later, Yvonne took a trip to the beach, and Chris saw his opportunity and emailed the group saying they could come spend the night in the yard. That Saturday, so like the wife would be away, he felt more comfortable with them there. That Saturday, 15 or so cars showed up. 20 people were lying on their backs watching the sky, and Chris got carried away, and at a distance, he saw the orbs came. He forgot that Yvonne would want to make it back for church, and when he arrived early that morning, she arrived at the house that looked like it had been colorized by an invading force, is the way he described it. With all 15 cars, 20 groggy people who spent all night asleep under blankets in their yard. She stomped past them all into the bedroom and just apparently glared at him. He noted, quote, it was the last time I would ever pull a stunt like that. He got a look from his wife that said, I'm going to fucking kill you. In the fall of 2010, Yvonne was out riding the lawnmower later than usual. Chris was in his study and could see her headlights. She was working near the back corner of the yard by the towering old oak tree, the exact spot where Chris had seen the small red-eyed being in 2007. Yvonne was, quote, always afraid of going back there at night. Chris noticed the mower had stopped halfway between the house and the tree line. He looked up and saw the chair was empty. And then he heard a, quote, a violent crash on the back porch. Yvonne was on the ground, both legs bleeding, gasping for breath. She explained that she'd got an eerie feeling, and as she headed back, the mower got stuck on a grapevine. She looked toward the oak tree. In the, quote, dark shadow of the brush, she saw 2 red eyes, 3 feet off the ground, looking straight at her. She leapt off of her seat and ran for her life, crashing through the furniture, and Chris went back out to turn off the lawnmower, but whatever she'd seen was gone. A more terrifying encounter happened in August of 2009 when the family was in the living room on a beautiful morning, and Chris, Emily, and Ryan were on a wide leather sofa. Directly behind them were, quote, 3 big open windows. Jeremy was on a love seat opposite them, and Yvonne was in the wing-back chair facing the sofa. And suddenly, Yvonne leapt up out of her chair, her face white as a sheet, he would exclaim, and she was pointing at the window directly behind his head, half screaming, "Did you see that?" But before Chris could react, Jeremy muttered from the love seat, "Yeah, I saw it." Damn. "There was a man behind you," Yvonne said, trembling, "a big one." Ryan and Jeremy went running around both sides of the house, but they didn't see anything. And back inside, Yvonne described what she and Jeremy had seen. This is what she described for Jesse to read.
A dark figure, the shape of a man with no distinguishing features, but a pair of eyes, had drifted up directly behind the head.
The house was, quote, lifted 3 feet off the ground, and for this figure to occlude the entire window, it must have been a giant, Chris estimates, 8 feet tall. Its eyes looked directly at Yvonne, and then it simply whisked itself away, gliding sideways past the other windows before disappearing. The family was all too scared to go to the river that day. They didn't go anywhere. High strangeness continued in the following spring. We have one Saturday morning, Yvonne was on the front porch talking to her mother on the phone. Emily came in and told Chris, Mom needed me. And he went out to the porch where Yvonne covered the receiver. And she simply just said, your friend's here. He just went around. Yvonne said, your friend's here. He just went around back. Chris thought it was a friend who was supposed to call about a lawnmower, and he went to the back porch. Nothing there. He looped around to the front, and he said no one was there, just Yvonne talking on the phone. No car parked in the yard either. He walked back again, and he just said to Yvonne, nobody's here, and she shrugged, then said, you know what was weird? He was in a blue truck, and it was old and shiny. Chris went back to look. This time, he noticed, quote, the grass was still covered in morning dew. If someone had walked or driven, they would have left tracks. The only tracks that he could see were the ones that he just made. He also realized he never heard a car or their noisy gravel driveway. You know, those tires roll up gravel. Yvonne told him the full story. She'd seen a gleaming, polished 60 styles light blue truck turn into their driveway and stop by the mailbox. As she watched, the truck, quote, suddenly accelerated down the driveway to the back of the house. And she remembered that the truck didn't make any sound on the gravel either. The Saturday before Easter 2011, Chris's sons had friends over. Chris, meanwhile, was falling into a deep, futile sadness, overwhelmed with guilt as always. He went to the back porch steps, looked up at the sky, and, quote, vowed never to speak of them again because his life was just continuing to fall apart, all because he kept talking about these things. He told them he was grateful for the healing of his Crohn's, which he attributed to them, and that, quote, I wouldn't let my family hurt anymore. Or rather, quote, I won't let my family hurt anymore. No more conferences, no more visitors, not a single mention ever again. That was his prayer, his pledge. He's done. At 3 a.m., he was shaken from sleep by a roaring, thunderous command that simply said, arise. So he shot up. He saw the
Gamers, rise up!
Gamers, rise up! He saw, quote, dim holographic outlines of the shadow beings at the foot of his bed. He found he couldn't move on his own anymore, and he was willed to stand up and got dressed. He felt he was going to an appointment, like that was the feeling he had. The three shadows led him out the back door into the woods toward the kennel. 10 feet away, they stopped, and one extended its arm toward him. It simply said to him, take this. It is yours. You must keep it. So Chris reached out. It was, quote, about the shape of a small Chihuahua dog without a head or tail.
What?
It squirmed slightly. It was
without
alive.
a head or tail? Did this inspire Mars attacks?
Ooh, did it go?
Oh, maybe it did. He said it was about the shape of a small Chihuahua dog without a tail or a head. So he said the fur, that it had fur on it, sharpened into the spiked quills of a hedgehog. He immediately dropped it, and the alien said to him, no, pick it up, keep it. Like he was being commanded to. So he put the thing in the empty dog kennel that he had. He then took, which is just like, that's such a weird visual to me. Just like aliens are like, no, you're getting up, come into the woods here, have a spiky animal pet. Don't let it go. It's yours now. Sorry. It's like they're just like getting rid of it. He's taken a few steps when a powerful blast of air then hit him, and he looked up and saw, quote, a hole had opened up in the trees. Quote, a zone about the size of a car was suddenly complete blackness. Out of it, a 1,500-pound black bull with horns came charging out of this void in the sky at full speed. And just as he thought he was about to be killed, it went over me, knocking me on my back. It wasn't entirely solid, saying, I saw stars and branches beyond its translucent body. He rolled onto his hands and knees. Quote, before me, a woman floated in a circle of light. Her beauty tranquilized me, and my fear vanished. He then rose to his knees, now inside the circle of light, and her feet were bare and pointed downward as she hovered. She wore a gleaming robe and had, quote, blonde hair and the most dazzling blue eyes. Her lips didn't move, but she spoke in a high, clear voice, what I'm assuming is like a telepathy. She simply said to him, "You know why I'm here." Chris said he was overcome with embarrassment, remorse, and sorrow, knowing she was referring to the vow he made 5 hours earlier. But as he looked at her, he knew his error wasn't final. She spoke again. "You cannot quit now. You made an agreement that must be kept." She communicated that the orbs, the beings, the missing time were all tools she had been using, and that the beings were, quote, guardians she sent to do her bidding. She, quote, vowed that if I continued in this mission, she would protect my family and me, all the orbs to be photographed, and allow me to show these phenomena to witnesses. He asked what the creature in the kennel was, and she said, quote, it was an icon of humanity, directionless, senseless, without a head or tail, in dire need of protection and guidance. She warned that forces were at work to cast these phenomena in a negative light, and, quote, if this view won out, humanity would be set on a path to ruin. His job was to tell humanity of the phenomena's benevolence. After 20 or 30 minutes, he was, quote, totally drained. The lady's halo drew back into her and she vanished. Chris then scrambled back to the house and passed out on the hallway carpet floor. So this animal apparently is like a metaphor, and it's fascinating. Like, it's just trippy. It's weird as fuck, and it's so bizarre. But after this encounter, everything did change. Days later, NC MUFON called asking Chris to speak at a conference in Asheville. He drove up with his son, Ryan. He started to tell the story of the river incident, but he said it felt wrong. He stopped and began to tell the room about the lady instead. The audience reaction was not good. He said it was hushed murmurs that quickly turned into jokes and laughs. He started getting heckled you're getting heckled on a MUFON presentation stage, dude, shouting at him that they wanted to hear about the river encounter. That's what they wanted to hear, not the stupid lady. yeah, exactly. They're like demanding him play his Freebird. But Chris said he pressed on saying, quote, this is important. This lady appeared to me. It was real. Then something happened he said he couldn't explain.
This is my greatest fear, by the way, of seeing something like this.
No, yours and mine both, brother. Yeah. Alex, read this. He said, as he said that, this is what something happened. This then happened.
There will be a 6.8 magnitude earthquake on September 23rd, 2012 in Baja, California. In New York this fall, the elections will be disrupted.
Chris was, quote, breathless. I had no idea why I had said what I'd said. I realized my face was wet with tears. Like he was just like being heckled, and he suddenly like channeled something on stage and started crying. A few weeks later, MUFON contacted Chris again. They want him to meet with Diana Pasulka, a religious studies professor at UNC Wilmington. And here is where I will put my personal opinion in that I've heard other people have as well, where I think this event for Chris, all these weird interactions with aliens and all kinds of things, gets put into the frame of, no, you're being chosen by God, into how he sees this. Because his meeting with Diana Pasulka sort of changed his view on all of this. Chris also brought Junior, hoping her academic credentials might offer some validation. Diana told Chris that in her study of the Bible, quote, the popular image of angels was completely at odds with the texts. She said, quote, rosy-cheeked babies are not crawling around in midair in the book of Revelations. She told him his story down to the details, quote, felt closest to what she believed was the truth. And it's important to remember that the book of Revelations was added way later. And not only were the main gospels written about 1 or 2 generations after when Jesus would have been killed, but like this is absolutely like the book of Revelations is the one that I think is the easiest to not take literally, but she is approaching it kind of almost in a literal sense. Diana was working on a book about him and had consulted for Hollywood screenwriters. She wanted to connect with them with Chris. He was wary, but agreed to meet with them in October if the beings gave him a sign. He prayed every night that week. And by Thursday, he hadn't seen anything. But that night, around 9 p.m., the rain stopped. Yvonne opened the door and just said, look, Chris, what is wrong with that tree? About 75 yards back, the old catalpa tree was, quote, very biblically rather, quote, erupting into flames. a tree caught fire, which is very Moses-esque imagery.
I was going to say, it's like a burning bush. Like, what the fuck?
It's after he met with Diana. And he was already religious to begin with, and same with his wife. But now we're looking at, like, you're getting what he's perceiving as an authority in this area, telling him that this is all very God focused. You're probably dealing with something with God. I was going to say,
there's a lot of like for a guy who's so religious, there's a lot of things shows up in his room, and I would be like an angel rather than an alien. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that, to his credit, he really didn't go like angel either, but he just didn't know what it was. He was still here. He started really labeling these things, such things. But either way, the family ran out and to realize it wasn't like a firework. It was a quote, full top to bottom blaze all through the interior of the tree. And later, investigator Chase Klotsky collected samples to send to MIT. And the results were, quote, no gasoline or other accelerants, no sign of lightning strike. The official cause was labeled unknown. Even stranger, the fire hadn't killed the tree. Small green roots sprang from it later on. So like this tree was just fucking burning for some reason. Chris took this as a sign that, okay, maybe he should meet with the screenwriters and agreed to let them work on a proposal. That's how he took it. That November, Chris and Yvonne were invited to a high-level event in Philadelphia called The Gathering, and it was attended by physicists, Egyptologists, and government officials. Chris was singled out as one of only 2 direct experiencers at this event. There, he met Grant Cameron, a prominent UFO researcher. They hit it off, and the following spring, Grant came to stay with the Bledsoes on their property. During Grant's visit, Chris's dog Nellie was playing in the backyard, and as Chris and Grant walked back to the house, Nellie ran past them. Chris saw it immediately. Quote, a steady stream of blood running down in a trail on the grass. Blood was spurting from her neck. Chris sprinted after her, tackling her inside the front door. He carried her to the patio, kneeling over her, and he found a, quote, 1.5-inch gash on the side of her neck. He put his hand on the wound, and blood kept rising between his fingers. It was, quote, wide enough to put 3 fingers in. That's how bad the wound on his dog's neck was. Junior ran to get a towel. Chris pressed the cloth to her neck, closed his eyes, and did what he always does, prayed, saying, what do I do, God? What do I do? He said he felt something unlock inside of him. Nellie relaxed. When he lifted the damp cloth, quote, no blood shot out. There wasn't even a gash anymore. He fell back, dumbstruck, and Grant Cameron stood there filming the whole thing. Nellie walked off, quote, wagging her tail, and Chris realized the lady had used him as a conduit of healing. In June 2013, Chris met Timothy E. Taylor at a gathering in Pennsylvania. Tim worked for NASA with an extensive background in, quote, medical, aerospace, military, and intelligence technology, holding 13 patents. He asked if he could visit the Bledsoe home to talk to Junior. On September 7th, 2013, Tim arrived. He gathered the entire family in Ryan's small bedroom, and he opened his laptop. The first slide apparently read, for the Bledsoe family only, in all caps. The next was a warning about penalties for sharing the information. After the briefing, Tim pulled out, quote, a small piece of metal, silver gray, about the size of a postage stamp. He handed it to Chris. It was incredibly light, apparently, and then he pulled out a second piece that looked like, quote, wrinkled aluminum foil with an unusual property. It could be creased and then perfectly smoothed out, which sounds identical to the supposed stuff that was found in the area at the UFO Area 51 crash in the 1947, if I remember correctly, right around then. The Roswell crash. And then it also sounds familiar to Art's Parts. I don't know if you remember that from Coast to Coast, but Art's Parts, where he supposedly had some stuff, and this was one of the things that is supposedly part of it, like a piece of metal that was no thinner than aluminum, that never creased, never got teared, was light as a feather. Tim took these and placed the second piece in Chris's right hand. And this is what I'm going to have Alex read, what he says happened next.
Out of nowhere, energy jolted through me. My eyes darkened with tunnel vision as if I had just gone into G-lock in a fighter jet.
It's like G-force lock in a fighter jet. Chris's forearm began pulsing, and Tim immediately took the metal back. And apparently just immediately asked, almost to himself, but almost out loud, why you? Why you? Why you? Like, this Tim guy was in disbelief that the Chris was whatever is happening to him. Tim later explained the material contained quite, quote, isotopes that came from 50 million light years away and was not made by human hands. Chris's biological reaction was the, quote, strongest he had seen so far. Just 2 weeks later, Chris was out on his back patio by a fire when two orbs appeared out of thin air, announcing themselves with bright flashes. They were, quote, bright tangerine orange, and as soon as he focused on them, the rate of their flashes accelerated. They then plummeted downward, stopping about a quarter mile away, just 100 feet over the tree line. They were perfect spheres about the size of mail trucks. Then they began to perform. The orbs on the left changed to gleaming white, then back to orange, and the orb on the right, the right orb responded, changing to the same white, then back to orange. They started bobbing up and down. As one went down, the other went up, almost like mirroring each other in a playful motion. And it was as though, quote, they had telegraphed to my brain the image of children playing a game. After 30 seconds, like a bullet out of a gun, they shot off due west. 2 nights later, Chase Kloetsky called. She'd gotten a report about an incident in St. Paul's that same Saturday. A group of 5 ghost hunters had driven from Wilmington to investigate a farmhouse. And after investigating, they walked to an old slave cabin in the woods. The, quote, moment they traversed the ditch, they saw 2 brilliant streaks of orange light over their heads. The group immediately got scared, like I think any ghost hunter who probably does it for fun or like entertainment would if something weird actually did happen. Then, quote, from behind a tree, they saw something lean out and look at them. It had glowing, unblinking eyes. 2 of them unholstered their guns and started shooting. In the flash of gunfire, the being disappeared. And when they got back to it, it's such like, of course, like,
I love it's such an American thing.
God,
just shoot it.
It's unblinking. It's opening fire with their rifle, with their pistols, dude. It's so good. It's so dumb. In the flash of gunfire, the being apparently disappeared. And when they got back to their cars, they discovered, quote, that 2 hours had passed that none of them could account for. I imagine the minute they started pulling the trigger, they were like, whoom, and just fucking froze them. And that reason it disappeared is because their consciousness slipped forward 2 hours and the thing is already long gone.
Yeah.
They were just like, I like this. It's a fun pet theory that people have out there, but I love the idea that like Earth is like a backwater planet that you only go by if you have any desire to. And if you visit it, there's like a warning you get, like, it's not our fault if you get killed by visiting planet Earth.
So it's Taco Bell.
yes. Earth is fucking Taco Bell.
It's a fucking gas station hot dog.
God, yeah, that's fucking U.S. and the world, not the U.S., but the world is. But come to the U.S., you're going to get shot more likely than anywhere else. If you go much other places, you're not likely going to get an introduction with a fucking rifle to the face. Let's just be honest. That's how America is. Think about Skinwalker Ranch. They not when the first gun didn't work, they got a different gun, and then when that gun didn't work, they got a different gun. They just kept trying everything. Yeah. So the thing was gone. 2 hours couldn't be accounted for. Chase asked Chris if he would investigate the site with her the following Saturday, and he agreed. Tim Taylor, curious, booked a plane ticket to join them. The next Saturday, Chris picked Tim up and stopped by his house first so Tim could see the burnt tree. As they walked up to the hollow trunk, a, quote, silver snake emerged from the opening, extending its body directly at Tim. It was about 2 feet long with the, quote, color of dully polished aluminum and black eyes that locked onto him. Tim gasped and staggered back, and the snake slowly withdrew into the shadowy hollow. Chris had never seen a snake that resembled it before. Tim explained his grandmother was a full-blooded Native American, and she'd, quote, always told him that the appearance of a silver snake was always a sign from God. To be honest, I did not research into that. I'm taking it at face value, but
fair enough.
Would you doubt a man named Tim?
I have already said. He gets free pass from me.
This is Tim, not Chris. This is Tim, not Chris.
Oh, well, no, then F that guy.
Okay. That night, the full group set out to recreate the events. They all set their timers, and after clearing the main house and cabin, they scrambled across the 6-foot ditch and headed into the woods. Remembering Tim's advice, Chris began silently singing something he thinks he should.
How do you silently sing?
The Battle of Evermore by Led Zeppelin. This to help him keep them from getting into his head.
He just played it in his head.
This is just a Stranger Things episode.
It is just turning into one. Yeah, this is what Tim's advice to Chris was to prevent them from getting into his head for some reason. As they walked, Chris at the back of the line saw, quote, a pair of luminous bright green eyes leaning out from behind a tree. He tapped Chase, who saw them too, but they kept walking, and when he looked back, they were gone. The eyes were gone. After an hour at a power line clearing, Pete, who was a naval sub-commander, used his compass to navigate back to their cars. They plunged into the dark again, and after a few minutes, quote, all 8 of us arrived back at the ditch and climbed over, except there was no cabin. We were back at the power line clearing, the same place they had just left. This freaked everybody out. They turned around and went back through the woods the same way. This time, when they arrived at the other side, the cabin was there. They rushed to their cars, and the next day, Chase called Chris, saying, Chris, you will not believe what happened last night. We figured it out. We lost 15 minutes of time. So this is what they were there for. 8 of them, like, excruciatingly, like, tracking everything, and they sometimes lost 15 minutes of time, probably when they were wandering around. They explained the timers they set in their car showed a 12-minute discrepancy from the ones that they were wearing. In the summer of 2013, Chris was contacted by Doug Auld, a painter from Hoboken who'd seen the Discovery documentary all those years back and, quote, realized what an injustice had been done. So Doug visited for Thanksgiving and just really hit it off with Chris's father, Ted. Doug returned in December with a terrible bruise on his hamstring from hockey, and Chris, quote, figured I might as well say a prayer for him. And so he placed his hand on his leg and asked God to heal his wound. The next morning, Doug, quote, reported what he called a miracle. His horrific bruise had all but gone away and stopped causing pain entirely. Tragically, just after that visit, Chris's father died of sudden heart failure. Doug was the last person to speak with him besides his mother. The funeral was held on a gloomy, cold winter day, and as the family drove back in the limousine, they came to a place where tree branches hung over the pavement. I'm going to have Alex read this next part. This is as they kind of park under the branches. This is what he says he sees.
In the cold gray light, raindrops speckling the windshield, we saw a giant white owl perched over the middle of the road. It was speckled white and brown, but its dark eyes must have been the size of baseballs.
They passed just 15 feet below it, and Chris felt it was another message that his father was okay, like on the other side, after he passed. In the months following his father's death, Chris' rheumatoid arthritis continued to worsen. At the same time, Junior was, quote, spending more and more time in his room, barely speaking to anybody. And by Easter 2014, and now Easter 2014 is approaching, and the night before, April 19th, Chris's niece, Stephanie, and grandniece, Anna, were at his mother's house next door. Around 12:30 a.m., they took their dog out for a walk, and they were stunned by a bright light flashing from the front porch of Chris's house across the street. They saw a beautiful, luminous woman in a flowing white dress. She emerged through the front door, just floating just over the porch, then glided slowly down the steps. She cast a brilliant halo around her entire figure, and the lady stopped, turned, and made eye contact with them. Then she shot off between the houses toward the back of the yard in a blinding streak of light. The first words Chris heard on Easter morning were from Junior, saying, "Mom, I'm so sick. I don't know what's wrong with me." He lifted his shirt, quote, to reveal a swelling mass almost the size of a softball on his side.
What the fuck?
They raced him to the local hospital, and he was immediately put in an ambulance and rushed to UNC Hospital in Chapel Hill. He'd been, quote, suffering in silence from a kidney infection for weeks. That's why he was in his room the whole time in pain. The doctors told him, quote, he likely would not have survived if they waited one more day. Junior stayed in the ICU for almost 2 months. Chris writes that deep, quote, deep in my heart, I know that the lady had appeared that night to give Junior the impulse to ask for help. In early 2014, Tim revealed his mission was to, quote, help cure cancer in children. And he began sending Chris academic papers on stem cell applications. Tim tasked Chris with meditating and dreaming about, quote, novel applications of quasi-crystal formations in the medical setting, unquote. Tom dropped a bombshell. The metallic pieces he'd placed in Chris's hand when they met that first time were, quote, these very same quasi-crystalline structures, dated to 50 million years old and, quote, did not come from Earth. What's the matter, Jesse? You losing you?
No, man, no. Everyone's getting a free pass, man. This isn't totally off the wall and getting more bonkers with everything you say.
Real.
This is so real. Free passes all around.
And Chris's intense biological reaction with when he held that indicated that he was, quote, connected to this formation somehow. Tim's team had just received approval for their first operation, a 40-year-old Spanish lady with severe bone cancer. This is like his first attempt at curing cancer. In mid-June 2014, Chris and Yvonne went on a weekend retreat to Linville Falls. The first night, a friend asked Chris why he'd been painting so many hummingbirds in his art lately. And later at 1 a.m., the group drove up a mountain to see the Brown Mountain Lights. Now, have we talked about the Brown Mountain Lights? It's another UFO phenomenon in the area where people see these lights over by the Brown Mountain Ridge when they drive. But on this particular night, as they started up the 4-mile dirt road path, quote, a brown bird about the size of a mockingbird appeared in their headlights. For the entire drive up the mountain, which took 45 minutes, this bird kept circling us. It stayed with them for the 2 hours at the overlook and escorted them back down, disappearing exactly in the same spot it originally emerged. The next morning, Tim called to ask how he thought Monday's surgery would go, and Chris told him about the bird. But, quote, we both needed a more specific sign. He wasn't sure if this is like a sign that surgery, his cancer treatment was going to go well or not.
If you came to me and said, hey, I saw a bird and it says everything's going to be okay. No matter what was going on with me, I'd be more worried about you.
That's fair. And that's kind of the reaction he usually got.
Okay?
And that's the reaction Chris got from day one. It was like, are you okay? Later that day, their friend Cindy went to take a nap in her private cabin. Half asleep, she noticed something strange about the coat rack. Quote, then it clicked. There was a 6-foot-long black snake coiled almost all the way around the pole. It was looking at her now. Chris thought it was a snake wrapped around a staff, like the image of like a medicinal, the medicinal logo of like doctors or whatever. What do you call it? I don't know what your name of it, but you know what I'm talking about.
Caduceus or whatever that is?
Caduceus, yeah, exactly that. The image of the Caduceus. They said that it then morphed into a vision of the Spanish patient walking again, the one that they were going to test this cancer treatment on. He called Tim and, quote, told him his patient would be walking again in 60 days. The operation was a success, and she was up and walking well before 60 days elapsed. A few weeks later, it was the 4th of July, 2014. Junior had a first date to watch fireworks, and his only warning, quote, not to talk about UFOs around his date. Just don't talk about UFOs around me and my date. That's all I want to do. Jeremy and Ryan, his other 2 sons, went to a pool party. Chris and Emily stayed home to watch the movie Independence Day, baby. What a perfect fucking movie to watch for this family.
This is like the most postmodern like alien story that you've ever told on this goddamn show.
Yeah, this is wild.
It's 20. Well, we're at 20. We're about to be 2015.
So many brushes with all the shows and stuff that I used to watch when I was a kid, all the characters and things that I used to read about. This is crazy.
I love it. So they were watching Independence Day when around 9:30 p.m. Chris paused the movie and asked Emily if she wanted McDonald's ice cream. And he went outside to wait by the truck. A minute later, he heard her yell, "Dad, what is that?" So he rushed over, and his daughter was pointing at, quote, a giant orange house-sized orb hovering just over the trees. And Chris immediately knew it had the same size and shape as the orb that took him for 4 hours on January 8th, 2007. The orb slowly morphed from sideways oblong to a round-edged cube. Inside, both of them could see shaded concentric circles telescoping inward, giving the impression that they were moving through like a tunnel. All around it, the town's fireworks flitted around, quote, dim in comparison. Chris told Emily to stay while he got Yvonne, which again, Chris is like, Emily, stay with this weird light. I'll be right back. He's like leaving his daughter while he's like, I'm going to get your mother. But he went back and got Yvonne, and Yvonne rushed to the back porch in a towel. And, quote, the moment she saw it, it darted away to the north like a spooked animal. When Chris and Emily got back, Junior and his date were on the porch, and Junior, quote, was talking about UFOs. And he was driving his date, as he was driving his date home, apparently they saw an orb hovering over a field. It was a brilliant orange ball of light, and when they got close, it shot off into the sky. Junior was elated. It was the first time he ever felt comfortable telling anyone outside of his family about the phenomena, never mind the fact that it was a first date. He felt immediately relieved that he could share this experience with her. Just then, Ryan and Jeremy also got home. The first thing they said was that they'd seen an orange ball of light streak over them while they were in the pool. That night, the whole family was together on the porch sharing their stories, and all of us were awestruck in our own ways, but no one was alone. They had a night where everybody could actually just feel comfortable talking about this shit. That night, then we fast forward to that fall. Tim invited Chris to a rocket launch at Kennedy Space Center, and in August, a heavy package stamped confidential arrived. It was dozens of pages of documents to, quote, gain an adequate security clearance. Because by mid-September, Chris was cleared. The launch was for the Orion multi-purpose crew vehicle. Chris drove 12 hours to Florida and met Tim in the group, quote, scientists, military personnel, medical researchers, and aerospace engineers. And Tim gave them a formal briefing on, quote, how to move through military spaces. The next day, Tim was busy, so a scientist gave them their tour. Chris saw the behemoth vehicle assembly building and boarded the crawler. After lunch, Tim took them to the astronaut crew quarters, where every astronaut spent the weeks before a launch in quarantine. The quote-unquote den mother explained that in the whole existence of the facility from the 1960s to that day, only 300 people had been granted access. She showed them the very chair Neil Armstrong had suited up in before stepping foot on the moon. And after the tour, Chris pulled Tim aside saying, Tim, I'm flattered, but why on earth did you need me on this trip at all? And Tim looked him dead in the eyes. And Jesse, this was Tim's response to Chris about why he was even needed here, because clearly this was not for Chris.
Chris, everyone who has ever been in those rooms has been to space. They brought something back with them, and it's still there. Now, you have felt it too, and it has felt you. Everything will be different now.
And in a dramatic way, he's kind of describing what we've talked about, or known as the hitchhiker effect.
Hey, just really quickly, really quickly. I know it's kind of giving everyone a pass on all this. The longer 2 hours now in, I realize I should never do that again.
Yeah,
you should start. You should ask yourself that question for the first time. 120 minutes into the show.
Right. Well, I figured, like sometimes you got to give him, look, life's rough and you get one little frivolous thing. I'm going to give it to you. But then, it's one of those inch mile situations. I gave a little and they ran with it. And now I'm listening to what is basically a sci-fi original movie.
But in the book, and I would suggest if you want to read it, he has photos of all these people. He's in the government areas.
He has photos of the room where they brought something back with them, and it's still in the room, and now everything's good. Well, the man said everything will be different now. That is a teen novel.
Well, it's not a physical thing as much as it's like the awareness of whatever this is aware of you now.
Sure, yeah, no, he's the one. He's been chosen.
That's not what he's also saying. He's just saying that the people who are usually like these things become aware of are the ones that are going out into space and like doing all this research.
Right. But he has to do that because he's chosen.
But that's why Tim was asking, like, why you? Why you?
Gotcha.
Why you?
Understood.
I don't get it. Why you?
Yeah, I get it.
And also to this day, he's got fucking government people following him around, like studying him. His brain is being studied by fucking universities to this day. He shares videos of orbs fucking all the time. Whether you believe in them or like, again, a lot of them I think are satellites, but still like for his credit, he's not hiding, this stuff. And it does seem like these people have an interest in him for some reason. Whether this aspect is real or not, obviously it's coming from Chris. Like, there's no way for me to fucking know, but there is some weird legitimacy to something clearly happened to this guy. Yeah, he's like, after he says that, Chris was like, I need to step away, dude. Like, let's give me a second. I need to clear my fucking head. The next morning, the security was twice as extensive. Chris passed by, quote, dozens of men with M16s, all while trying his best to keep playing the Led Zeppelin song in his head, because he was afraid now he might get mind controlled or his mind might get read while he's in here. So he's taking the thing Tim, the government guy who got him in here in the first place, told him to do. Led Zeppelin song, dude. Just play it in your head over and over and over.
Watch Shrek in your head, dude.
There you go. He says, quote, I could feel my chest rumbling and vibrating as an unimaginably bright light flared from the base of the rocket that he was being brought to see as it took off. As the deep roar grew and grew, I lost my breath. A wave of wind and heat hit us, and I prayed that nothing bad would happen. They just watched a 1.3 million pound rocket rise and finally disappear into the sky until it became a white speck. Chris was exhausted and decided to drive the 12 hours back home overnight instead of staying another night, which I get that. I'm like that too. I'm like 12 hours, just get out of the way now. I don't want to stay here. He was also excited to go home and surprise his family. He said it was a long, lonely night, and as dawn came, he pulled into his driveway, and out of nowhere, he said he felt his heart break. A Titanic of sorrow grabbed him, and his eyes were wet. He was gasping for air and sobbing, and he thought of his dog, Nellie. He said, I knew she was gone. Emily was on the porch, shocked to see him. He saw it in her eyes and told her, and he said to her he already knew. Apparently, Nellie was hit by a car, and as Emily said to him, she was hit by a car, Daddy. She died 2 days ago. We'd have told you, but we didn't want to ruin your trip. Later that week, Chris stood over her grave crying. He said he felt something and looked up right as an ivory-colored orb flashed at him. He said he knew it was her, his dog, and he took out his phone and the white lady, sorry. And he took out his phone and she let him take it was his dog, one last picture of her. In mid-2014, a mysterious package arrived with no return address. Inside was a pristine white napkin with the presidential seal from Camp David, a mission patch for the Orion launch, and a small jewelry box where inside was a, quote, 24-karat gold pin with a distinct triangle inside of a circle, almost exactly like the one that was on the being's chest. He would learn that this was a secret OP pin, which meant off-planet pin, given to those who have direct experiences with whatever this phenomena is. Doesn't mean you're taken off planet and you go elsewhere. It means something not of this planet is like you've had an experience with it. That winter, his RA was confirmed as moderate to severe. That's his rheumatoid arthritis. He was put on chemotherapy drugs and immunosuppressant injections. In 2015, Chris spoke at a Southern Baptist Bible college. The dean repeatedly interrupted, quote, shouting how he knew I had been taken by a demonic force. Embarrassed, kind older ladies rescued him, inviting him to one's house for cake. They felt bad for him. These old religious ladies were like,
dean was like, that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, because it's Southern Baptist Bible College. So like the dean is like these experiences he had. He's like, these are demonic forces that you're dealing with, not aliens or not benevolent or angels, but demonic. And at the house, Chris told the story of his father's recovery from kidney cancer. He mentioned the silver orb that appeared. And as he said, quote, a number of women gasped and looked, pointing over my head, all asking, did you see that? Apparently, while he was telling the stories of all this shit, they'd seen bright flashing lights over his head. A young woman, Sharon Deboni, leapt up and hugged him, started crying, saying, quote, I just knew you were going to talk about kidney cancer. Apparently, her own kidney cancer had just returned in her remaining kidney, and she was devastated. So Chris prayed for her all the way home. The next morning, he went to his chicken coop and found a kidney-shaped egg. He sent her a photo of it and said it was a sign. He just sent a photo of it to the woman's like,
this looks kind of like a kidney. Okay.
Yeah.
That reminds me of you.
Well, apparently the next morning she called sobbing with joy. Her oncology appointment showed miraculous results and her platelets were back to normal. And the cancer had, quote, shrunk to tiny, negligible specks.
No.
And to this day, apparently Sharon is cancer-free, in remission. On July 2nd, 2015, Larry Friskella called about a 12-year-old boy named Brandon suffering from a, quote, quickly worsening genetic mitochondrial disease. Doctor said he would be lucky to make it to 13 years old. The family had run out of options, and they had heard of Chris, so they decided, fuck it, last hope. Chris flew to Washington, D.C. and met with Brandon. There's a photo with him and Brandon in his book. A small, pale, and brave boy. Chris felt, quote, an energy in me and got the impulse that if I gave Brandon a hug, he would receive the energy he needed. And this was the prayer he said while he gave Brandon a hug. Jesse, you can read the little prayer.
Heavenly Spirit, this child is so special. He is the most humble person I have ever met. Surely he deserves a second chance. Help him, watch over him, and guide him. Heal him.
At 1 a.m., Brandon's mother called ecstatic. Her son had 2 full helpings of food after he left, something that she hadn't seen for months and months. That October, the family flew Chris to New York for Brandon's bar mitzvah. And the night before the bar mitzvah, Chris met, quote, a man named Jim Semivan in a conference room overlooking Central Park. That name may
say that again.
Ring a bell? Jim Semivan?
No, I don't remember.
Well, Chris knew Jim as was, quote, the James Bond of the CIA. He was a retired 25-year operations officer. Chris told his entire story to Jim, and Jim listened intently. Then, quote, started talking in great detail about his own experiences with the phenomena. At the bar mitzvah party the next night, quote, shouts and screams erupted. A man was, quote, slumped forward with his face down at their table. Chris laid his hands on his shoulders, and he was planning on saying a prayer. But before he could say anything, he shot up, gasping for air. He revived. Jim's wife insisted that Chris was the one that saved him, but Chris says he, quote, felt the lady's unmistakable energy flowing through me. He said it's not him, it's always the lady just using him for whatever reason. Just 2 weeks later, Colonel John Alexander came to visit Chris in Hope Mills. After showing him the property, John forced the issue and asked to go to the river because he was there not to hang out and like see the town, but he was there to fucking see where the events happened. Chris, nervous about trespassing, brought only John and John's wife, Victoria, and his daughter, Emily. They walked the muddy path. It was getting dark, and they got back to the rental car at the gate. Victoria and Emily sat in the back. John leaned against the fender, and Chris stood beside him. John pressed him on his experiences. As the sky grew dark, quote, the old familiar charge came over me. My hair stood on end. Every sound from the woods stopped. It was like a switch had been flipped, which is Betty Andreasson and all the other ones we talked about. Dogs began barking with, quote, that strange fear in their voices. Then a loud owl. The energy in Chris heightened, and he stood up, pointed at the sky, and said, oh, I think they're here. Just in the most nonchalant shit. Dude. No exclamation, no excitement, just said, oh, comma, I think they're here.
He's like an touched alien person from a movie at this point.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's like, what is that? Like K-Pax or something? Yeah. Like this is out of control.
Get here for me.
A few seconds passed, and, quote, right where they were looking, a brilliant orb flashed, pulsating for 2 or 3 seconds, a white beyond white, bright beyond bright. Before they could speak, quote, it shot off in a streak of light to the south. John, the colonel who was there, apparently just said, oh my God, Victoria, did you see that? The wife missed it. She didn't see it, but Emily had, and John walked away and made several calls. This was the event that, quote, totally floored him. Of his 2 genuinely unexplainable encounters, this was by far the most staggering. He said Chris had a temporal connection, a telepathic connection with a non-human intelligence. It seemed Semivan was more blown away that he knew it was about to happen before it happened. Like there was like this weird, like he knew. And in 2016, Jim Semivan himself visited again. By this point, Jim Semivan visited because he wasn't the one there. It was John that he sent. And by this point, Jeremy was in college and hardly ever came home, still struggling with the cruelty from his peers. So he just stayed away from home after he got into college, his other son. Jim, noticing the tension, sprang into action and gave his kids orders like they were new recruits at Langley. Like Jim immediately noticed that the kids were uneasy with him around. So he commanded them to invite, quote, everyone they knew to a sky watch that night. And he still does these to this day. Especially he wanted to make sure that the classmates who had been the most cruel and doubtful came. That night, about a dozen people gathered, including 3 friends and new graduates of Fayetteville Police Academy arriving in their squad cars, and Jim Semivan stood up. I'm going to have you read this, Alex. This is what he did. This is what Jim did as they all got here. This is like the first real official, like first time he's being followed, kind of.
He introduced himself, detailing as much as he could about his career in the CIA. In a voice of absolute certainty, he detailed how significant this case had become. NASA, the CIA, the FBI, the NRO, the Vatican, and every division of the Defense Department had their hands in this, he said. The White House and other world leaders had been briefed on the events that took place on the very land we stood on.
He then went on to denounce the Discovery Channel episode as a ridiculous and exploitive piece of entertainment. Chris said at this moment he could feel tears of joy coming into his eyes because somebody was like, the Discovery episode was shit. And that just made him feel so good. He said he saw his children smiling. No cloud of shame was hanging over them. It was honest, unmistakable pride on their faces. No orbs appeared that night. But Chris says, quote, something far more miraculous happened. His relationship with Jeremy improved dramatically, and the deep wounds between him and his son began to heal. And that to him was even more important. Jim was also told Chris about Tom DeLonge as we get into literal modern day UFO stuff happening, because this is in 2016. We are 1 year off from the Tic Tac video, the GoPro, Go Fast video and all that stuff leaking. 2 weeks before Christmas, Tom had called and Chris was flown first class to Los Angeles to meet with Tom and the screenwriters.
This is so crazy, dude.
A few months later, Tom called about metamaterial Chris had mentioned, and this led to a meeting with who else but Lou Elizondo. Chris,
our guy, our boy.
The clue is Chris is.
And then he was talked about on the Chilluminati podcast.
Chris and two friends gave Lou, quote, medals that we witnessed dripping or being ejected from the orbs, which is something I left out, which is another common thing from orbs. Sometimes people see like a molten metal kind of dripping out of them. Lou, quote, received all of our off-world material, and Chris was later, quote, told the materials have been classified and will not be returned. Chris gave them to the wrong dude, man. Chris gave his materials to fucking Lou Elizondo. And if it's like, we know that Lou Elizondo still works for the government via contract. He never saw those materials again. Just gone, which is insane. After that, though, at this meeting with all these people, 3 long years would pass. Chris's arthritis, the chemo, and the immunosuppressants had hobbled him at this point. His hands had become virtually useless with pain and swelling. He held on to the date Jim Semivan had told him about, a date that was January 8th, 2019, which was the 12-year anniversary when a, quote, positive change was supposed to come. That night, he went to the pond by his new cabin, ached, then burned, then screamed with pain, and prayed for relief because the arthritis was just fucking ruining him. After hours, though, nothing happened, and he went to bed demoralized. Easter 2019 came. He waited all Saturday night, but no sign came still. He woke up Easter Sunday, stiff and demoralized, with his rheumatoid arthritis worse than ever. That night, he was sitting with Yvonne when, quote, that unmistakable electric charge came over him. He went 3 years without having an experience, really. And anyway, he told Yvonne, I'll be back in a while, and walked out the back door. He stumbled to the edge of the pond across the water where an orb was waiting for him, he described. It was a ball of whitish blue light, and it started to descend, spiraling down in a corkscrew motion, flashing rapidly and brilliantly, changing colors in a white, yellow, orange, red cycle. It stopped on the far shore about 40 yards away and started shooting up and down, like an excited child that can't control their emotions, he described it as. Chris fell to his knees. As he watched, he began to see the outline of a tall being, as if the orb was contained within its body. He fumbled for his phone to film it, and as he did, the being, quote, started to approach me gliding over the water. He pressed record, holding the phone at his chest, quote, thrilled to have pulled this off. The being, quote, came to rest at the center of the pond, just 25 feet away. He looked down at his phone to check the angle and was stunned to see, quote, a whole 10 minutes had passed. He looked back at his phone again and noticed that in my final initial rush to record, I neglected to actually start recording. He didn't hit record button,
dude.
Yeah.
You know what though? I will say that's happened to me.
Me too.
So I can't feed it, fault it too hard, but
he said that the moment that he pressed record, it went totally dark and he was crushed. Like there was nothing on the footage. A small dimmer light then flashed for the next 17 minutes, which he did record, and he was spellbound, realizing it had to have known I wasn't recording. Like he thinks it came back and flashed to give him something to record because he realized that he didn't get anything. Because remember, it made the promise to him that he would be able to record and share this stuff. So
it's just doing good customer service, looking out for him.
Yeah, like, you lost 10 minutes. Sorry, you didn't get anything on your recording. Here you go. You can record this 17 minutes. He awoke the next morning with his head, quote, flooded with visions and understandings. The message, quote, we will allow you to film us more. Share the truth. Difficult times ahead. He was warned of famine, plague, and unrest. And when COVID-19 hit, he was, quote, convinced that this was what the lady had been warning us about. He fully believes in the disease. He fully believes vaccines are good. Like, he's not like gone that direction. He just thinks that when COVID-19 hit, he's like, oh, this is what she was talking about when she was talking about famine. He was terrified for his health at this time, too, because he wasn't in a good place because his doctor ended up taking him off of his immunosuppressants in March of 2020. He spent 6 weeks quarantining while his family got sick. And slowly, he said, he noticed that his joints weren't aching quite as much. And by the end of 6 weeks, he could walk without a cane. He was gaining weight and even managed to button up his pants. His crippling pain was gone. And finally, in 2021, John Alexander connected Chris with David Broadwell, a pilot who'd had his own sighting. And while on the very first phone call, Chris felt the energy and walked outside. And immediately the sky was alive with light. He called chariots of fire. He told David, who was at the time was in Virginia, to go outside. And quote, above him, orbs began appearing and flashing, just like above me. This spooky action at a distance became a regular experiment Chris started working on, seeing if it would happen. This led to a, quote, secret gathering at where else but the Monroe Institute in May 2022, bringing together experiencers, researchers, and government figures. And there, Chris participated in a double-blind EEG experiment. When a scientist tried to hook him up, the machine, quote, was picking up the left side of his brain, but nothing else. When they unplugged the leads, the left side of his brain was still registering on the computer with nothing connected. A new machine had the same failure. Somebody, one of the scientists, and jokingly said to him when the second machine failed, said, you've defeated our machine. They finally got an old machine to work. They handed Chris 2 sealed boxes. In the first, he envisioned a small square, a postage stamp. And the second, all he said was different. Here's what he said he saw, Jesse. And this is where the consciousness aspect of this starts trickling in, which is what they're clearly messing with right now. This is what he said he saw in the second box in his mind's eye.
I saw a bright blue flash with the outer edges having a gradation of colors. I felt as though there was a living, glowing insect inside.
The second box contained, quote, a tiny piece of metamaterial provided by Dr. Harold Puthoff, which we've talked about many a time, he believed was not made of this earth, or on this earth. And Chris's description of it feeling alive was similar to Uri Geller's description of material Werner von Braun had handed him decades earlier, which is another big Chilluminati couple-parter we'll talk about one day. The conference ended with one last skywatch. 2 skeptics seemed to be hampering the energy, quote unquote. Chris finally calmly came over and said, look, just please open your mind. And later, one of the skeptics apologized, said, I'm sorry, Chris, you have opened my eyes, because at that very moment, someone shouted, look, as an orb was flashing, timed perfectly to the two of us apologizing to each other. A $200,000 camera array filmed that orb for an hour, and while the star field moved out of the frame, the orb never budged. And to this day, experiments like this are ongoing. He's been part of many a Skywatch, both free and, of course, the MUFON gatherings or conferences where you have to go and pay to go to the conference to be a part of them. And you can go to this day on Instagram or wherever else and see the orbs he posts. You can read into all the people that he studied with, because that brings us basically up to modern day, 2025, where Chris is continuing on and talking about his experiences. His daughter is very involved in the experiences now, and she kind of talks about it a lot on his channels, not her own, really. They still run tests on colleges and stuff, and it is just a consistently occurring phenomenon. Unfortunately, the stuff with like the healing and his Crohn's disease and stuff, there's no way for us to know if any of that was
There's no evidence.
Real. But there's evidence that there is something interesting happening enough with him and those who experienced it that people are willing to study him for some reason and are willing to run tests. And that is where we leave the Chris Bledsoe episode, because he is still alive. He's still around. It's up to modern day. And as things get weirder and weirder with the drones in the sky and the lights in the sky and the weird things people are filming, a lot of Chris's old videos and claims don't seem as fucking crazy as they were, even when this book came out almost 3 years ago now. Like, right. We've had the drone incident since then. We've got more drone incidents happening now. We've got like weird shit being filmed in the sky constantly. It's just It's just weird. And with us leaving him there, as always, I'm curious, boys, what are your opinion on Chris Bledsoe? And are you gonna look into him anymore? Or I'm just curious what your thoughts are, especially compared to Betty Andreasson.
It's fascinating because it's like, for me, I feel like this is that perfect line, right? Where you're like, this is either somebody who's seen something. I mean, or it's not even that. It's like, this person is both probably seen something and is now has kind of taken it and ran with it. And I'm kind of interested, like, where you,
I think I said the exact same spot.
Where you land on it, especially Mathis, because it's like Andreasson, it's like almost like what we were talking about the other day about how there's the UFO sighting that's like in San Francisco before the zeitgeist version of a UFO exists. So, they're describing something that sounds like a UFO to me who knows about UFOs, but they don't, right? And so for me, this that's what Andreasson was like. Andreasson was like somebody who was saying something completely, and you said those eventually go on and become crazy as well. But it feels like this, we just went all the way to the crazy part. Like, it's like, I'll give you my opinion in a moment. I'm curious what Jesse's is before I'll wrap it up with how I feel.
I mean,
any of it is interesting to you? The fact that he's even being studied?
It's very interesting. But the longer it went on, like a lot of these things, the less and less I believed.
Yeah.
Like we hit,
it starts to become inconsistent in like a reality way, sort of.
Yeah. There's a lot that I'm like, this definitely didn't happen now. But in the beginning, it's one of those, that's the tough thing, is it's one of those things where in the beginning, it seemed vague enough and weird enough. Who can question it? Mm-hmm. But eventually, the more that it's like when, and even this guy did this, but it's like when you have like a prophet or something, like a religious guy being like, I had a vision and God spoke to me and he said, insert vague thing. Great. Go nuts. Like, sure. But the minute they are like October 23rd, 2025, the world will end. I'm like, no, it won't.
Well,
this guy's full of it.
I'm glad you say that, because there's a little tidbit I wanted to leave off with, but before I say what it is, my opinion is, I think, like what yours is around Alex, and even Jesse, I think, where I think maybe the first event, whatever that was, that happened at the campsite and like lasted all night, and the neighbors made fun of him, and he became a laughing stock. I think there is something that happened there. I don't know what it is, obviously, and it plays with like whatever this phenomenon is seemingly consciousness adjacent in some way. And I find it fascinating that once he got the religious perspective from somebody, the imagery almost immediately changed to something way more Christian adjacent, with the snakes, the burning tree, halo around the white lady kind of stuff. Whereas where my mind is like, oh, that's where maybe the consciousness aspect of it comes into play. I don't know about the healing stuff because that's such a leap, but I am reminded of something that I've had on my list for a while. I just don't know what episode to work it into, of something called the Philip experiment. It's a small little thing. It's not a full episode.
Dude.
Yeah. So the Philip experiment.
Wait. For me, please just wait one more week till we talk about the Philip experiment.
But it's so valuable at the end of this conversation here.
I know.
Oh, come on.
I don't know what it
Jesse,
is at all.
How about this? Without saying what the experiment is, it's a test on whether your own thoughts create reality.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say how it was done and the interesting shit about it. That'll be apparently for next week. But I think about that, and if they're so convinced that this is what's happening and they're giving it attention, like a thought form or an egregore, maybe there is an aspect of it like that just is created, not in the way of like it existed already, but we with our own minds and thoughts force these things into existence under the rules we set for it.
That's exactly right.
That's why it seems so local or so bizarre or unique to those people.
Yeah.
And like the son's experience was horrifying, while the father's was like 4 hours lost and he got healed of Crohn's disease. Like very different experiences.
And also a lot of desperate situations end up with some sort of Jesus conversion.
100%.
And I think maybe there's an element of that here as well at play, but it's like getting like fusion cuisined into like a UFO story also, kind of. You know what I mean? Like like a lot of people who like come out of drugs or come out of like really just traumatic things, life-threatening illnesses, stuff like that, have some sort of personal experience that leads them to becoming born again or
Absolutely.
You know, and so whatever actually happened to these people, like from the scientific perspective, I think there's some element of that sort of, I don't know if it's international, but at least that American impulse to like, oh, Jesus, and kind of like filter yourself in that lens also, like the further you go in, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's why I want to end this episode with a little bit of a prophecy he did get given that I wanted to hold till here. Happened in Easter of 2013. And specifically, it was in the early morning hours of March 31st. And during this experience, he described being floated painlessly out of his room, taken into a bluish white light, and transported to a desert canyon where he found the White Lady seated on a massive stone-carved throne. And it was here that the White Lady told him, verbatim, when the red star of Regulus aligns just before dawn in the gaze of the Sphinx, a new knowledge shall come into the world. Chris, to his credit, says, I don't know what that means. He doesn't think it's an end of the world thing. He just doesn't know what it means. He doesn't assign any meaning to it, which is probably why it hasn't like been the main thing that's taken off about him. But people who like, as the quotes, people have learned about the quotes come out, people have done like astronomic charts, and apparently that the red star of Regulus will be above the Sphinx in Egypt somewhere around Easter of 2026, aka a few months from now, not that long from now. And the White Lady just told him the red star of Regulus, when the red star of Regulus aligns just before dawn in the gaze of the Sphinx, a new knowledge shall come into the world. And he doesn't, I don't think it means shit. Like, I don't know what the fuck that means. Nothing. I don't know what that could possibly mean, but I will go out. He has said many times he does not know what it means, and he doesn't think it's a bad thing. He just doesn't know what it means, because I know a lot of cult people are like, it's the end of the world. Only I have the answers. The man is openly saying, I have no answers for you. So keep that in mind. I'd be curious. I'm so curious what people think about this particular one, because he's so active in modern day. But that's where we leave the episode, gentlemen. Thank you for 2 deep dives into some crazy UFO abduction stories. I know it was a long couple of episodes, but I appreciate you allowing me to just go through it all. Same with everybody who made it to the very end. We're off to go do a mini-sode on Patreon, patreon.com/Chilluminati pod. We will be back next week with another regular episode. We appreciate you. We love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.